Golden sword beasts, limbless, sword-shaped, and extremely tough. They move through outer space at extremely great speeds and use the tip of their bodies to stab their opponents. The information regarding the species of space beast flashed through his mind the moment he saw them. He was no longer as ignorant as before. Even though he did not have any in-depth knowledge about the beasts that lived in outer space, he knew about them to a certain degree. Golden sword beasts form huge swarms. There will be many of them every time the swarm moves. Now that the spatial battleship has been surrounded by golden sword beasts, it'll be very difficult to break free if we don't kill them. The spatial battleship moves very quickly, but it's still difficult to outspeed primordial realm golden sword beasts. After all, they live in outer space and thrive here. Shaking them off won't be easy, Jianchen thought quickly and understood the situation that they faced. Sir, you must understand the situation we face right now as well. The formations on the spatial battleship cannot be maintained for too long. If we don't kill these golden sword beasts, everyone will be in trouble once the formations run out of energy. After all, the golden sword beasts possess astonishing speed in outer space, and there are even existences equivalent to us at the primordial realm. They can even outspeed the spatial battleship. Once we lose the spatial battleship, it'll be impossible for us to shake them off with our strength in outer space. An old voice rang out. The 6 people who served the Float Empire gathered together on another part of the deck. They were all stern as they made their way towards Jianchen. The one who spoke was a white-robed old man. He was ruddy and seemed rather sage-like. However, his eyebrows were as straight and sharp as swords, giving him a piercing presence. 9th Heavenly Layer Infinite Prime. Jianchen's heart leapt. He saw through the old man's strength. He was the most powerful person out of the 6 primordial realm experts, having reached peak Infinite Prime. The 5 other old men were much weaker compared to him. Clearly, they followed his lead. The Fa Yun that Jianchen encountered several days ago also happened to be among them. I am Giant Pain. I hope that you can assist us in killing the golden sword beasts, continued the 9th Heavenly Layer Infinite Prime, requesting Jianchen's assistance sincerely. I can already sense 12 presences that belong to the primordial realm among the golden sword beasts. One of them is close to chaotic prime. It'll be extremely difficult for us few to kill them all, said Jianchen. Do not worry, sir. There are a few more people at the primordial realm on the ship. They've already come, Giant Pain said. With that, another 2 people arrived on the deck as expected. They were a middle-aged man of medium stature and an extremely handsome young man. Including Jianchen, a total of 9 primordial realm experts had now gathered on the deck. 2 first heavenly layer infinite primes. Jianchen glanced past the 2 primordial realm experts and saw through their strengths with a single glance, causing him to shake his head secretly. It would be fine if the 2 first heavenly layer infinite primes possessed extraordinary battle prowess, but they would struggle to protect themselves if they were just regular infinite primes. This was because the battle prowess of golden sword beasts were able to overwhelm cultivators of the same level. As a result, only those with extraordinary battle prowess could handle one of these space beasts at the same level of cultivation. Boom! At this moment, the spatial battleship shook violently again. The 12 primordial realm golden sword beasts all launched powerful attacks. Under the leadership of the golden sword beast that had almost reached chaotic prime, a total of 12 primordial realm strikes landed on the same location of the spatial battleship. It was devastating. The combined might of the strikes had surpassed infinite prime and reached chaotic prime. The strikes immediately ripped open a great hole in the formations of the spatial battleship. The formations rapidly dimmed, and their defenses suddenly plummeted. I'll keep the most powerful golden sword beast busy. I'll leave the rest to you. Time was tight, so it was already too late for them to come up with any special arrangements. With that, Giant Pain left the spatial battleship first, engaging in a battle with the strongest golden sword beast. Immediately, booms rang out, and the entire region distorted. Powerful sword chi engulfed the battlefield, ripping open gashes in space. Giant Pain comprehended the laws of the sword. Not only was he the person with the greatest cultivation on the spatial battleship, but he was also the one with the most terrifying battle prowess. Against Giant Pain was a golden sword beast that was thousands of meters long. It flickered with golden light and constantly stabbed and slashed at Giant Pain like a huge flying sword. It was extremely fast. At the same time, the 5 other primordial realm protectors from the Float Empire charged off at the spatial beasts. They each kept a primordial realm golden sword beast busy. Only Jian Chen and the other 2 first heavenly layer infinite primes remained on the spatial battleship now. Jian Chen remained calm, but the 2 other infinite primes were stern as if they were about to face a great enemy. Jian Chen, primordial realm golden sword beasts are basically covered in treasure. They're priceless, so don't forget to collect their corpses, said Kaya to remind him. She had spent a long period of time with him, and they had fought together many times as well. She understood Jian Chen's strength extremely well, so she did not worry about him at all. Brother, do not get blinded by greed. The golden sword beasts are very powerful. The slightest carelessness can even claim the lives of primordial realm experts. Surviving is what's important, said the middle-aged man nearby to Jian Chen. With that, he charged off into space, beginning a battle with the weakest primordial realm golden sword beast. In the end, the handsome young man glanced past Jian Chen indifferently. He said nothing and charged off the spatial battleship. Kaya, take care of yourself. Jian Chen reminded Kaya and stopped hesitating. With a single step, he charged towards the crack in the formation and arrived at the battlefield. The 8 primordial realm experts kept 8 golden sword beasts busy. Apart from the strongest Giant Pain, none of the others faced the golden sword beasts in open combat. They maneuvered their way around the beasts. Giant Pain engaged in an extremely intense battle to the death against the 9th heavenly layer infinite prime golden beast. There are 4 more primordial realm golden sword beasts left. 2 of them are at the 2nd heavenly layer, 1 is at the 3rd heavenly layer, and 1 is at the 6th heavenly layer. Jian Chen glanced past the 4 other golden sword beasts. The 4 golden sword beasts continued their wild attack at the spatial battleship. Due to their lesser intelligence, they did not know how to adapt to the situation. They only mindlessly followed the orders of their leader, attacking the formations of the spatial battleship. Even when cultivators brushed past them, they would completely ignore them as long as the orders from their leader were not completed yet. As a result, the spatial battleship would remain their target as long as they were not provoked. Even though these space beasts possessed an advantage in terms of battle prowess, they suffered from a fatal disadvantage of low intelligence. At this moment, a powerful sword intent suddenly appeared. It surged and seemed to be filled with a supreme bearing of the ways. It was like the ruler of the world had arrived, making everything in the surroundings yield to him. Even the supreme laws and order in the surroundings changed ever so slightly. Jian Chen struck out. He was clad in light as his bearing became abstruse, filled with a sense of immortal. His will engulfed a region of 100,000 kilometers. Wherever his will was present, all the powers below him became his own way, something that he could control. At that moment, Jian Chen seemed to rule over the world as he unleashed his bearing as a sword immortal. This was the ultimate way of the sword he had comprehended. At this moment, he slowly raised his right hand, and he pointed it above him. Immediately, all the godhood golden sword beasts within a range of 100,000 kilometers froze. In the next moment, heavy booms erupted. All the golden sword beasts there actually exploded. Golden body fragments and dazzling golden blood surged out like a flood. All of it gathered above Jian Chen, forming a huge sword completely condensed from the remains of the golden sword beasts. The golden sword beasts had been killed by Jian Chen's powerful will. Jian Chen comprehended the ultimate way of the sword, so he was a ruler that possessed the power to kill all things. His will had become the laws of the world there, forming his own domain. Within it, all existences and powers below him were under his control. A single thought was all he needed to decide life or death. In the blink of an eye, a range of 100,000 kilometers around Jian Chen emptied out. All the golden sword beasts there vanished. Under the control of his powerful will, they all gathered above his head, turning into a colossal sword forged from blood and flesh that shone with dazzling golden light. This was the first time Jian Chen had truly fought after becoming a sword immortal and comprehending the ultimate way of the sword. The might of his attack this time was world-shaking. It formed a terrifying scene such that all the primordial realm experts who were busy fighting their golden sword beasts looked over in shock. What powerful sword intent! What is this ability? It's so astonishing! Jian Pain, who fought against the 9th heavenly layer golden sword beast, noticed the disturbance near Jian Chen as well. When he looked at the huge sword condensed from the remains of many golden sword beasts above Jian Chen's head, he struggled to remain composed. This was because even he could not create such a grand scene. He actually killed so many golden sword beasts in the blink of an eye. What is this secret technique? Originally, I thought he was only a regular primordial realm expert because he was hiding in the high-class cabins. I never thought he would be so powerful. The 5 other primordial realm experts of the Float Empire were shaken up as well. Even though the godhood golden sword beasts were really nothing to them, it was still rather terrifying for someone to kill so many of them in a single moment. I'm probably not his opponent. I didn't offend him earlier, right? Fa Yun looked at Jian Chen, who stood in outer space like a sword. At this moment, he became filled with fear. Suddenly, there was a flash of intense white light. Sharp sword chi swept out. The huge sword condensed from the remains of the golden sword beasts above Jian Chen's head suddenly shone with dazzling light. It was so bright that it illuminated the entire space like a sun. The huge sword suddenly fell with powerful sword chi. Its target was one of 2nd heavenly layer infinite prime golden sword beasts attacking the spatial battleship. Even though the golden sword beast had low intellect, it could still sense danger instinctively. Immediately, it stopped its attacks and turned around. It turned into a streak of golden light and stabbed towards Jian Chen. It was extremely fast, vanishing with a flash. However, no matter how fast it was unable to avoid Jian Chen's slash because his will had already locked onto it. Unless its strength exceeded Jian Chen's, it would not be able to avoid Jian Chen's attack. Boom! Jian Chen used the sword condensed from the remains of the beast's companions to slash the 2nd heavenly layer infinite prime golden sword beast, producing a heavy sound. The 2nd heavenly layer golden sword beast was blown away by the strike. A deep gash appeared on its body, and golden blood flowed out. Even though the golden sword beast managed to survive, it was heavily injured by Jian Chen's attack. Its light dimmed. With just the first attack, Jian Chen had heavily injured an extremely tough golden sword beast, a creature that was extremely difficult to deal with. Jian Chen stepped out and crossed through outer space in pursuit. His will enveloped the surroundings such that all the godhood golden sword beasts within 100,000 kilometers of him exploded and died. They were all killed by his will. With just a few flashes, Jian Chen arrived before the heavily injured golden sword beast. He extended his arm, and his hand shone with dazzling light. He pressed it against the colossal sword-shaped body of the golden sword beast. Immediately, the golden sword beast shook violently. The supreme power of the laws of the sword poured into its body through Jian Chen's hand, wreaking havoc inside its body. The golden sword beast struggled wildly, but it was unable to break free from Jian Chen's hand no matter how it resisted. Its wounds became heavier and heavier, and its life force rapidly leaked away. It was becoming weaker and weaker. A few seconds later, the golden sword beast stopped struggling. It lay in outer space still. Its consciousness had been wiped out by Jian Chen. This was equivalent to a cultivator's soul shattering and dispersing. It was completely dead. How is that possible? He actually killed a 2nd heavenly layer golden sword beast so quickly? How is this person so terrifying? All the primordial realm experts paid close attention to the details of the battlefield. They obviously saw Jian Chen kill the golden sword beast, so they were all shocked. They felt emotional turmoil. I can sense that his cultivation isn't that much greater than the golden sword beast, yet it was unable to fight back at all against him. It looks like his origins are not simple. It's extremely likely for him to be a figure from some ancient organization. Jian Pain glanced at Jian Chen deeply. At that moment, Jian Chen actually became mysterious to him. Whether it was Jian Chen's way of the sword or his battle prowess, they were both extremely astonishing. Neither of them was something a regular primordial realm expert could possess, so Yi Jianping became suspicious about Jian Chen's origins. The black-robed spectral elder of the Darkness clan hid his presence and traces with a secret technique in another region of space. He seemed to have fused with the Darkness, preventing anyone from noticing him. He stared at Jian Chen in the distance indifferently as he quietly paid attention to all of his actions. He was ready to assassinate Jian Chen. This person is extremely powerful. He's definitely not as simple as having just reached the primordial realm like I previously imagined. He probably has a great background. Do I kill him or not? Thought the spectral elder. Originally, he was prepared to kill Jian Chen. After all, regular primordial realm experts were nothing in his eyes. However, after he witnessed the strength Jian Chen displayed when he killed the second heavenly layer infinite prime golden sword beast, he ended up hesitating. Very few members of their Darkness clan fought in open confrontations. What they were truly skilled with were assassinations, killing by delivering a fatal strike while the enemy was unaware. They would often be able to kill people even more powerful than themselves. As a result, the spectral elder did not fear Jian Chen. What really made him hesitate was Jian Chen's background and origins. He was afraid of offending a large organization and making trouble for the clan. He would take the risk and attack without any hesitation if there were any great treasures or profits on the line. However, this entire matter occurred because of a low-quality god artifact and Anya Jiuyo's impulsive actions. The spectral elder had to reconsider. Jian Chen had already begun stowing the golden sword beast's corpse away now. He did not care about the godhood golden sword beasts because they were not particularly valuable in his eyes. However, he needed to take note of the second heavenly layer infinite prime golden sword beast before him. The corpses of golden sword beasts were filled with treasure. Their hides were one of the best materials for forging weapons, and some formations required components of their bodies. Their blood was a crucial material in refining pills and possessed many other wondrous uses. As a matter of fact, the entire corpse of a golden sword beast could even be handed to a blacksmith and directly forged into a powerful weapon. If the golden sword beast before him was forged into a weapon, it would definitely be a god artifact. As a result, the corpse of the golden sword beast was a sizable sum of 5-colored divine crystals in Jian Chen's eyes. With a wave of his hand, the second heavenly layer infinite prime golden sword beast's corpse vanished from outer space. He had stowed it into his space ring. He did not pause after that. He struck out once again, targeting the golden sword beast at the same level as the one he just killed. Killing the weaker golden sword beasts was relatively easy for him. He could kill the third heavenly layer infinite prime golden sword beast if he fought it, but the fight would definitely take a lot longer. As a result, he specially targeted weaker opponents in hopes of killing the golden sword beasts as quickly as possible so that he could make their corpses his. Even though the corpse of a second heavenly layer golden sword beast is not worth as much as a forged god artifact, they're still worth 1,000 5-colored divine crystals at the very least, thought Jian Chen. Killing intent flashed through his eyes as sword chi surged from him. He had already begun to battle the second golden sword beast. At the same time, the formations on the spatial battleship were ripped open. Many godhood golden sword beasts formed a golden flow, surging towards the spatial battleship wildly. The various godhood cultivators on the spatial battleship had come to face them in battle now. They blocked the golden sword beasts on the deck. In a single moment, red and golden blood merged together, covering the entire deck. Meanwhile, various killing formations on the spatial battleship were activated. The weaker cultivators remained in their cabins, providing energy to the spatial battleship. As a result, the entire ship flickered resplendently. Many of the golden sword beasts were torn to pieces as soon as they came in contact with the killing formations. Golden blood splattered everywhere. The bloodbath between the cultivators and the golden sword beasts had reached a high intensity. It was no longer a battle between primordial realm experts only. It was a full-blown battle now. The battle between the primordial realm experts in outer space was the most violent. Half of the primordial realm experts were injured now. Their battle prowess was more ordinary, so they completely lost the upper hand against the Golden Sword beasts at the same level of cultivation. Even if they fought Golden Sword beasts that were a heavenly layer lower, they would only barely gain the upper hand. Killing them would be basically impossible. The Golden Sword beasts were extremely tough. It would be very difficult to inflict fatal injuries to them unless one's strength completely overshadowed them or an extraordinarily powerful attack was used. Only Jianping managed to keep the 9th heavenly layer Infinite Prime Golden Sword beast suppressed with the offensive power of the laws of the sword he had comprehended, barely gaining the upper hand. But that was all. It was still impossible for Jianping to kill the 9th heavenly layer Infinite Prime Golden Sword beast. At this moment, a wondrous mental pulse was transmitted. It was filled with pain and grief. The second heavenly layer Infinite Prime Golden Sword beast had been killed by Jian Chen as well with lightning speed. In just a short while, 2 of the 12 primordial realm Golden Sword beasts had died to Jian Chen's hands. The death of the 2nd primordial realm Golden Sword beast finally angered the 9th heavenly layer Infinite Prime Golden Sword beast. Immediately, it emitted a powerful mental pulse filled with anger. Golden Sword beasts had no limbs or openings. They just seemed like golden swords. They were a unique beast that thrived in outer space, naturally born from special circumstances. As a result, they used their minds to communicate with one another. The 2 other primordial realm Golden Sword beasts, one at the 3rd heavenly layer and one at the 6th heavenly layer, both stopped their attacks at the spatial battleship when they heard the furious mental pulse. It was like they had received new orders. They both turned around and pointed their tips at Jian Chen. They charged towards him with surging killing intent. Jian Chen became stern. He did not dare to be careless when he had to face both a 3rd and 6th heavenly layer Infinite Prime Golden Sword beast simultaneously. He immediately became cautious. Whatever. I'll just use you to test my true strength, thought Jian Chen. He felt no fear. Instead, this fight roused his battle intent. His presence surged as he directly charged towards the 2 Golden Sword beasts. Jian Chen's will from the ultimate way of the sword was only useful against power and existences that were weaker than him, such as the godhood Golden Sword beasts. Even if they were god kings, he could kill them with a single thought. However, against beasts that were on the same level as him, the effectiveness of his will would be greatly reduced. Beasts as powerful as that had the ability to resist his will. Suddenly, the powers of the laws of the sword descended. 2 powerful strands of sword qi condensed on Jian Chen's 2 sides before shooting out as streaks of light. They ripped through space like bolts of lightning, hurtling towards the 2 primordial realm Golden Sword beasts. The sword qi contained his comprehension of the ultimate way of the sword, so they were even more powerful and vicious than regular sword qi. Boom! With a deafening boom, the weaker Golden Sword beast trembled and was actually pushed back by Jian Chen's sword qi. The stronger, 6th heavenly layer Infinite Prime Golden Sword beast emerged mostly unaffected. It locked onto Jian Chen's presence, stabbing towards his soul with cold killing intent. It did not slow down at all. Jian Chen's face was cold, and his gaze was piercing. He gently swept his finger across the space before him. Immediately, the space where his fingertips passed was ripped open, forming a long crack. It was like invisible sword qi was hidden in the tip of his finger, possessing extremely astonishing power. In an instant, Jian Chen's finger collided with the Golden Sword beast. At a closer glance, his finger remained 3 inches away from the Golden Sword beast. However, this tiny distance seemed like a gaping chasm that neither of them could cross. The colossal Golden Sword beast and the tip of Jian Chen's finger became locked in a stalemate, 3 inches apart from each other. Time seemed to come to a standstill at that moment. However, this stalemate only lasted for a single moment. The space between Jian Chen's finger and the Golden Sword beast suddenly began to twist and tremble. It was like a terrifying power was being charged up. In the end, an extremely terrifying storm of energy suddenly erupted in that tiny space with a deafening boom. Jian Chen was immediately blown away by the energy. His dark, long hair flailed about from the storm of energy. Immediately, he clad himself with light from the laws of the sword to block the incoming energy. The sixth heavenly layer infinite prime golden sword beast was the same as Jianqin, having been pushed into a constant retreat by the storm of energy. Jianqin and the golden sword beast were basically perfectly matched in the clash this time. This sixth heavenly layer infinite prime golden sword beast is truly astonishingly tough. It's almost on the level of low-quality god artifacts. I probably can't kill it without using the 9-star sword of heavenly ways or the profound sword chi, Jianqin thought. Although his finger attack earlier did not seem special, it actually possessed his full strength. This was the most powerful attack he could unleash when only using his laws of the sword. However, he failed to injure the golden sword beast with that attack. At the same time, the golden sword beast failed to injure Jianqin as well. What strength! He can clash with a sixth heavenly layer infinite prime golden sword beast and emerge unscathed. Mid-infinite prime. This person's at the peak of mid-infinite prime at the very least, or maybe even late infinite prime. Everyone witnessed Jianqin taking on the strike from the golden sword beast straight on, which immediately caused the primordial realm experts who served the Float Empire to gasp. Their gazes towards Jianqin underwent a drastic change. Jianqin's ultimate way of the sword was just too powerful. They were unable to tell Jianqin's exact cultivation level from his laws of the sword, but his battle prowess alone was enough to stun them all. With such strength, he was the strongest expert on the spatial battleship aside from Yi Jianping. To another side, the eyes of the spectral elder who had remained hidden the entire time narrowed slightly as well. The battle prowess that Jianqin displayed just now surprised him as well. At that moment, the hesitant spectral elder made up his mind. He decided to give up on assassinating Jianqin. However, just when the spectral elder was about to leave, a great sense of danger suddenly descended, immediately making his face change. From behind him, a lightning-fast streak of light directly approached. The sword chi was extremely fast. The reflection of the dazzling light rapidly expanded in the spectral elder's pupils. The sharp presence had already locked onto him. The spectral elder immediately felt like he could not dodge the attack. There was nowhere where he could go now that the sword chi had locked onto him. He could only take it on forcefully. What surprised the spectral elder the most was that before the sword chi even arrived, it managed to influence the space around him, turning it into a domain of sword chi in a single moment. The invisible sword chi seemed to be omnipresent, filling every inch of the space around him. Even the origin energy in outer space had been forcefully transformed into invisible sword chi. It was as if he would immediately face the attacks of the sword chi with the slightest movement. What powerful sword intent! The spectral elder shivered inside as he became extremely stern. A black sword immediately appeared in his hand. As a black streak of light, it silently attacked the incoming sword chi. The black sword was a low-quality god artifact. As a primordial realm expert who belonged to the darkness clan that ranked third on the jade fluid plane, he obviously possessed a god artifact. However, the presence of the god artifact was completely concealed, and none of it leaked out. It seemed to have fused with the darkness completely, stabbing out silently. It was very difficult to discover. Boom! With a heavy rumble, the spectral elder's god artifact collided with the incoming sword chi. He was immediately forced out of the darkness, becoming completely exposed. The strand of sword chi was extremely powerful. Although the spectral elder wielded a god artifact, he was unable to stop himself from being blown backwards after the clash. You can actually sense my existence? The spectral elder did not try to hide anymore. He hovered in outer space and stared at Jianqin in the distance sternly. He was in emotional turmoil. Not only did his secret technique hide him in space, but it even covered all his traces and presence as well. Even opponents with greater cultivation than him would struggle to discover his existence. However, his secret technique was completely useless before Jianqin. Moreover, he had been exposed from so far away, which was absolutely shocking. Jianqin looked at the spectral elder and said, "You've been observing me secretly for so long. Was it just to watch me fight the golden sword beasts?" The spectral elder was taken aback when he heard that. Disbelief filled his face, and he cried out, "Why, you actually found my presence long ago, Jian Chen took a single step and crossed the distance, arriving before the spectral elder instantly. He said emotionlessly, "You tailed me suspiciously. It looks like your darkness clan wants to kill me." With that, Jian Chen's gaze gradually turned cold. "However, this is not the Jade Fluid Plane. Your darkness clan can act as they wish on the Jade Fluid Plane, but your darkness clan has no power in outer space." Light flickered on Jian Chen's hand. With that, he directly sent a palm strike towards the spectral elder. The palm strike contained his supreme sword intent. When he struck out, all the power in the surroundings seemed to become his, turning into omnipresent, invisible sword chi. The spectral elder's face changed drastically. As he faced Jian Chen's palm strike, he felt like he had completely sunken into a domain of sword chi. Endless sword chi surged towards him from all directions, forming a cage that locked him in. Suddenly, the spectral elder bellowed out, and the laws of darkness surged from his body. The god artifact in his hand shone with dark light as well. He stabbed towards Jian Chen as hard as he could. Third heavenly layer infinite prime. "Even if you wield a god artifact, you aren't my opponent," Jian Chen said coldly. His ultimate way of the sword was just too powerful, allowing him to possess battle prowess no weaker than a sixth heavenly layer infinite prime, and this was before he even used the 9-star sword of heavenly ways. In his eyes, the spectral elder was obviously not an opponent at the same level. Bang! With a grunt, the spectral elder was blown away. He immediately paled as bright red blood sprayed out from his mouth. His body had become covered with dense sword slashes, covering him with wounds. He became completely bloody. The sword wounds came from the domain. It was created by the omnipresent sword chi. This person is actually so terrifying. That bastard Anya Juyo has screwed me over. The spectral elder was extremely shocked. His gaze towards Jian Chen even bore a sliver of fear. He absolutely resented Anya Juyo. Jian Chen was just too powerful, especially his terrifying way of the sword. Even when the spectral elder wielded a god artifact, he felt powerless inside. He could not fend off his opponent at all. After all, the god artifact could give him a heavenly layer's worth of strength at most, allowing him to possess the strength to fend off fourth heavenly layer infinite primes. Against Jian Chen, who was no weaker than the sixth heavenly layer, a very large difference still existed. This time will only be a small punishment. If this happens a second time, don't blame me for not showing mercy. Why don't you hurry up and go deal with the golden sword beasts? Jian Chen barked. He did not attack the spectral elder anymore. He turned around and charged towards the sixth heavenly layer infinite prime golden sword beast. The spectral elder, on the other hand, watched Jian Chen leave with mixed feelings. When he calmed down, he also charged towards a golden sword beast. He worked with one of the protectors of the spatial battleship against them. However, he maintained a relatively great distance from Jian Chen the entire time. Clearly, he still feared Jian Chen very much. Jian Chen became locked in combat with the third heavenly layer and sixth heavenly layer infinite prime golden sword beasts. Temporarily, Jian Chen could not kill the stronger golden sword beast, so his main target became the weaker golden sword beast. He showed no mercy at all, unleashing his full strength in hopes of ending the battle fast. Obviously, it was not difficult for him to kill the golden sword beast with his current battle prowess. However, Jian Chen faced great obstruction under the interference of the sixth heavenly layer infinite prime golden sword beast. He was forced to spend some effort in repelling the stronger golden sword beast many times. Only then was he able to focus on the weaker golden sword beast. Finally, after around half an hour, he successfully killed the weaker golden sword beast, stowing the corpse away as quickly as he could. The corpses of these golden sword beasts would all be valuable. The stronger they were, the more precious they were. With the death of 3 primordial realm golden sword beasts, the pressure that the spatial battleship faced decreased drastically. Coupled with the addition of the spectral elder, the primordial realm experts from the Float Empire were gradually able to recover from their weaker position. However, even with that being the case, the remaining infinite primes apart from Jian Chen and Yi Jianpain struggled to gain the upper hand against the golden sword beasts. The defenses of the golden sword beasts were just too tough. and their battle prowess was impressive as well. Apart from experts with startling strength, most people would find it difficult to fend off golden sword beasts. Even with god artifacts, they would struggle to inflict heavy injuries. As a result, only 2 of the remaining 9 golden sword beasts suffered from some wounds. The 2 of them happened to be the leading golden sword beast fighting E-Giant Pain and the one who fought against the Spectral Elder and a member of the Float Empire. Jian Chen frowned when he saw how he was locked in combat against the 6th Heavenly Layer Infinite Prime Golden Sword Beast. It was worth more than the 3rd Heavenly Layer Golden Sword Beast, at least 2 times more, so he really wanted to kill it. However, he could not use the 9-star Sword of Heavenly Ways or the Profound Sword Qi. They were basically symbolic of his identity, so he was certain that the Primordial Realm experts would immediately recognize him once he used them. If he did not use them, the strength from his laws of the sword and chaotic body were not enough to kill the Golden Sword Beast. At this moment, dazzling light suddenly appeared. Formations began to fuse together on the spatial battleship, forming a colossal hexagram. Terrifying energy, enough to send chills down Jian Chen's spine, charged up within the hexagram. Jian Chen could clearly sense that over 80% of the power in the entire spatial battleship had surged into the hexagram like raging rivers. As a result, the energy within the hexagram grew more and more powerful. It shone like the sun, illuminating outer space. No longer under attack by primordial realm space beasts, the spatial battleship finally had enough power to deal out its most powerful attack. This is the light of destruction? Jian Chen's eyes narrowed. The energy gathering in the hexagram was alarming to him. The might of the strike would definitely be on the level of a 9th Heavenly Layer Infinite Prime or even beyond that. The light of destruction is a terrifying killing formation created from the fusion of many formations. It's the ultimate trump card of this spatial battleship, and its strongest attack when journeying through outer space. It requires a tremendous amount of resources each time it's used, and it is never used unless absolutely necessary. The information regarding the hexagram quickly flashed through Jian Chen's head. At this moment, the power within the hexagram finished charging up. A blinding stream of light suddenly shot out. The dark outer space was dyed white. Countless stars paled in comparison. It was as if the stream of light from the hexagram had become the only existence in the world. Boom! With a deafening sound, terrifying storms of energy swept out. The beam of light from the hexagram struck the 9th Heavenly Layer Infinite Prime Golden Sword Beast with power that was chilling to all infinite primes. Immediately, slashes appeared on the Golden Sword Beast. Golden blood oozed out and scattered in outer space. The light of destruction was just too powerful. It had surpassed the 9th Heavenly Layer of Infinite Prime and was enough to rival the strike of a chaotic prime. The attack alone had heavily injured the 9th Heavenly Layer Infinite Prime Golden Sword Beast. Heaven sealing 9 swords in trap. At this moment, E-Giant Pain called out, and 9 swords shot out from him. They fell into a formation and trapped the Golden Sword Beast. Afterwards, his sword danced, and he completely displayed his strength as a 9th Heavenly Layer Infinite Prime. Powerful strands of sword qi landed on the remaining 8 Golden Sword Beasts. Every single strand of sword qi was extremely powerful. They tore through space and ripped open gashes. The Golden Sword Beast that Jian Chen struggled to kill immediately suffered heavy injuries from one of E-Giant Pain's sword qi. Golden blood spurted out constantly as it was blown far away. The other Primordial Realm Golden Sword Beasts were heavily injured by E-Giant Pain's sword qi as well, knocked far away. All the Primordial Realm experts from the Float Empire roused their battle spirit, prepared to pursue their opponents. Don't keep fighting. Everyone board the spatial battleship, quick. At this moment, E-Giant Pain's voice rang out. He did not kill the 9th Heavenly Layer Infinite Prime Golden Sword Beast. Instead, he approached the spatial battleship. He swung his sword and sent out a few strands of sword qi, killing off the Godhood Golden Sword Beasts around the ship. With that, the Infinite Primes returned to the ship without any hesitation at all. However, the spatial battleship had already been surrounded by Golden Sword Beasts. Several 100,000 of them, or even 1 million of them, formed a huge ball that firmly encircled the entire ship. If the infinite primes wanted to return, they obviously had to kill these golden sword beasts and clear a path. Very soon, all the infinite primes killed their way back onto the spatial battleship. With their return, the intense battles that had erupted on the spatial battleship ended instantly. All of the golden sword beasts that had made it onto the ship were killed by them. At this moment, Jianping looked at Jian Chen and said sternly, "Golden sword beasts form very large herds. What we've encountered right now should only be a tiny swarm. The death of 3 primordial realm golden sword beasts will definitely alarm even more powerful members of their herd, so we can't remain here. We need to leave immediately. Sir, please clear a path." Clearly, Jianping was referring to Jian Chen's method of killing all those golden sword beasts in a single moment. The spatial battleship was surrounded by a dense layer of golden sword beasts. As soon as they cleared a path, it would be filled up with even more golden sword beasts. The slaughter would never end. There would obviously be no difficulty for the infinite primes to leave alone, but they would clearly be in trouble if they wanted to make something as colossal as the spatial battleship break free. The spatial battleship was just too large, so the path they needed to clear out would obviously be even larger. None of them possessed a method to kill swarms of golden sword beasts like what Jian Chen could do. Jian Chen obviously understood what Jianping was referring to. He glanced past the surroundings and nodded. In the next moment, he arrived at the stern of the spatial battleship alone, suddenly expanding his supreme will from the ultimate way of the sword. Immediately, Jian Chen's supreme will engulfed the entire region forcefully. At that moment, he seemed to have become the ruler of the world, where everything was under his control as long as his will enveloped it. At the same time, all the primordial realm experts on the spatial battleship felt like a huge change had occurred to the world around them, seemingly becoming rather foreign. The weaker godhood cultivators also sensed in shock that they seemed to encounter a mysterious and great obstruction in their usage of laws. As a result, they were unable to use them as freely as before. It was as if the laws they comprehended had completely vanished from this space. That was not all of it. Even the origin energy was beyond their grasp. They were unable to absorb any of it. Jian Chen's supreme will was useless against primordial realm experts, but godhood cultivators were unable to put up any resistance before it at all. Bang, bang, bang. With a series of explosions, all the godhood golden sword beasts within a range of 100,000 kilometers died. The several tens of thousand golden sword beasts in the domain were instantly killed off. Not a single one remained alive. Their remains and blood drifted through space. Immediately, a huge, gaping hole appeared in the dense swarm of golden sword beasts around the spatial battleship. What is this technique? It's so powerful. All the primordial realm experts gasped in extreme shock at this sight. Even though it was their second time seeing this, they were still unable to hide their shock. As for the god kings who had gathered on the deck as well, they were all stunned and felt great astoundment. Full speed ahead. Charge out of here. Jianping called out from the deck. His voice reached the interior of the spatial battleship, reaching the ears of the cultivators who were responsible for controlling the spatial battleship. Immediately, the spatial battleship shook and activated all of its movements formations to set off. Without the obstruction of the golden sword beasts, the spatial battleship charged out smoothly as a streak of light. Very soon, it charged out of the encirclement and vanished into the depths of space. Immediately, the region of space there settled down despite the earlier fighting. Having lost their target, the remaining godhood golden sword beasts wandered around aimlessly, waiting for orders from their leader. Boom! Before long, a great rumble suddenly rang out, and Jianping's formation shattered. The 9th heavenly layer infinite prime golden sword beast broke free. Its colossal, golden body shook in outer space as it produced furious mental pulses. Sensing the rage of their leader, all the golden sword beasts stopped moving. Their sword-shaped bodies trembled gently as if they were fearful. At this moment, a figure shot over from the sea of stars with lightning speed. He moved so fast that he was basically teleporting. Even 9th heavenly layer infinite primes would not be able to sense his traces as he traveled. Very soon, the figure stopped among the golden sword beast herd. He did not disguise himself at all. Instead, he hovered where the spatial battleship had paused earlier in a composed manner. He directly ignored the golden sword beasts in his surroundings. He was the elder of mountains and seas who had come all the way from the desolate plain in pursuit. The elder of mountains and seas hovered in the air with his eyes closed. It was like he was sensing for something. A while later, he slowly opened his eyes. He looked at the remains of the golden sword beasts drifting through the surroundings, and his eyes lit up. He said excitedly, "Jianchen has stayed here for a while. I can tell that he took part in the battle that erupted earlier. I'm getting closer and closer to Jianchen." However, Jianchen seems to be on a spatial battleship. Spatial battleships are fast, but how can they be faster than me? Spatial battleships were only as fast as chaotic primes as they moved through outer space. The elder of mountains and seas was a grand prime, so he moved much faster than chaotic primes. At this moment, a golden streak of light suddenly stabbed towards the elder of mountains and seas. The enraged ninth heavenly layer infinite prime golden sword beast had discovered the elder of mountains and seas. Without much thought, it immediately killed towards the elder of mountains and seas. However, the elder of mountains and seas did not even glance at it. He only raised his hand leisurely, and by pinching 2 fingers gently, he effortlessly gripped the golden sword beast. Afterwards, the elder of mountains and seas pinched his fingers slightly. With a crisp crack, the golden sword beast that had even forced the spatial battleship to use its trump card, the light of destruction, immediately crumbled. Its colossal body turned into countless fragments that scattered through the surroundings. At the same time, its consciousness dispersed. In the blink of an eye, the golden sword beast was dead. It had been killed with a simple gesture from the elder of mountains and seas. Even a mere 9th heavenly layer infinite prime dares to attack me. Space beasts really are space beasts after all, a bunch of creatures with low intellect. The elder of mountains and seas sneered scornfully. At this moment, another dazzling streak of light shot over from the depths of space. It charged into the battlefield with a blanketing presence. It was another golden sword beast, but it was much smaller than the primordial realm ones. It was only a few hundred meters long. However, its presence and the pulses of energy it gave off had completely exceeded the 9th heavenly layer of infinite prime. There's an emperor-level existence, equivalent to chaotic primes, among this herd of golden sword beasts, muttered the elder of mountains and seas to himself as he paid attention to the golden streak of light. He still did not take it seriously. The chaotic prime golden sword beast seemed to know that its 9th heavenly layer clansman had been killed, so it charged towards the elder of mountains and seas aggressively. It gave off astonishing killing intent. You have no regard for your life," said the elder of mountains and seas with a sneer. He swung his arm, and the surroundings immediately began to dim. The power of laws surged over like an ocean, blasting the chaotic prime golden sword beast far away. "Don't disturb me, or I'll kill you too." The elder of mountains and seas snorted coldly before closing his eyes and using his innate ability to sense Jianchen's position. His innate ability could only sense Jianchen's position, not his exact location. As a result, he had to stop and sense Jianchen's position every once in a while to avoid trailing off in the wrong direction. After suffering once, the chaotic prime golden sword beast seemed to understand the elder of mountains and seas' strength. It no longer charged recklessly. Instead, it produced a sharp mental pulse that passed through the space and reached the depths of the starry sea. The elder of mountains of seas was surprised inside. He immediately opened his eyes and became rather stern. He growled and said, "You're actually asking for help? Don't tell me the strongest in this golden sword beast herd isn't an emperor equivalent to chaotic primes but a sovereign-level existence equivalent to grand primes?" As if confirming the elder of mountains of seas' words, the space before him suddenly ripped open and dazzling light immediately poured out. A golden sword only 10 meters long appeared from the crack with blinding light, shooting towards the elder of mountains and seas with the power to kill. A sovereign-level existence among golden sword beasts. The elder of mountains and seas' face changed and he cried out. He finally became stern. The Golden Sword Beast Sovereign was equivalent to Grand Primes. It was the one of the most powerful existence that stood at the apex of outer space. The Elder of Mountains and Seas had never expected this small herd of Golden Sword beasts he encountered here would have given birth to a sovereign-level existence. Afterwards, deafening booms rang out. The Elder of Mountains and Seas engaged in an intense battle against the Golden Sword Beast Sovereign, causing space to collapse and the sea of stars to tremble. In the distance, the spatial battleship that Jianchen rode had already unleashed its full speed. Like a ghost, it shot through space silently. There were many cultivators on the deck of the spatial battleship, who were either cleaning up the blood or gathering the corpses gloomily or sorrowfully. Many cultivators had died during the battle against the Golden Sword beasts. There were many god kings among them. If the primordial realm experts had not returned relatively soon, probably even more cultivators would have died. These cultivators were all people without significant backgrounds. People who did remain within the cabins and did not take part in the battle. Anya Juyo of the Darkness clan happened to be one of them. Spectral Elder, you're actually injured? At this moment, Anya Juyo stared at the Spectral Elder in surprise. Currently, he was inside the luxurious cabin occupied by the Darkness clan. He cried out. The light in his eyes flickered and he asked, "Is the person auctioning the god artifact dead?" The Spectral Elder could not help but think back to the scene of despair when he faced Jianchen now that Anya Juyo had mentioned him. He immediately became angered, and his impression of Anya Juyo worsened. We can't afford to provoke that person. Juyo, it's best if you don't offend him. You must know that although our Darkness clan is feared by all on the Jade Fluid Plane, our clan is nothing in respect to the entire Saints world. There are far too many existences that can devastate our clan. I don't wish to see your harassment create a great enemy for our Darkness clan, the Spectral Elder said coldly. After his battle in outer space, his fear of Jianchen had become embedded in his heart. With his strength, even if it were impossible for him to defeat a 9th heavenly layer infinite prime like Yi Jianpain, he was still confident about fleeing. After all, it would be difficult for even an expert like Yi Jianpain to see through the hiding techniques of their Darkness clan. However, before Jianchen, he truly felt like he was unable to hide at all. He did not know how Jianchen had managed to see through his concealing techniques. His laws of darkness and the ancient secret techniques of their Darkness clan were completely useless before Jianchen. Moreover, Jianchen's method of killing countless godhood Golden Sword beasts with a single thought had filled the Spectral Elder with even more shock. It led to suspicions about Jianchen's identity. He could not be a simple person if he possessed such astonishing battle prowess and such terrifying techniques. The Spectral Elder struggled to imagine just how powerful the organization behind Jianchen was. Anya Juyo frowned and asked grimly, "Is this person really that powerful? Where even you, the Spectral Elder, are not his opponent." The Spectral Elder sighed, and lingering fear appeared in his ordinary eyes. He said, "You might not believe me, but if it weren't for his mercy and the fact that he didn't want to kill me, I probably wouldn't be alive right now. The person who's auctioning the god artifact has the strength of a 6th heavenly layer infinite prime at the very least, or even more." What? Anya Juyo's face changed drastically. Meanwhile, the primordial realm experts who served the Float Empire had all gathered on the top floor of the spatial battleship under Yi Jianpain's lead. This time, they were not sitting in the air. Instead, they had taken out a white jade table and invited Jianchen up, receiving him with aged wine. The strength that Jianchen displayed during the fight against the Golden Sword beasts had earned their respect. His services made them admire him. Fa Yun, who had tested Jianchen several days ago, took the initiative to say a toast, apologizing to Jianchen for his past brashness. Jianchen waved his hand and did not mind it. It had only been a small test from Fa Yun earlier. He did not do anything overboard, so Jianchen did not care about what had happened. Fellow Yang Yutian's way of the sword is so powerful that it's rarely seen. I'm afraid your master must be a renowned, supreme expert in the Saints' world, said Yi Jianpain. His eyes shone brightly with sword intent. Everyone on the desolate plain knew the name of Changyang already, So Jianchen changed his name to Yang Yutian after he left the desolate plain. Jianchen knew that Yi Jianpain was investigating his background. He immediately smiled mysteriously and replied, "My master is indeed a renowned, supreme expert of the saints' world. There are not a lot of people who don't know about him. However, he especially warned me to not admit that I'm his disciple or mention my background unless I become a Grand Prime." Jianchen's words contained some lies and truth. The master he referred to was obviously one of the 5 grand exalts of the immortals' world, the old master of the twin swords. His words towards the end were all lies. However, he indeed could not disclose his true identity before he was powerful enough to fend off Grand Primes. However, when they heard that, the primordial realm experts immediately became shocked. They were quite frightened. Grand Primes were figures on the level of ancestors in their float empire. They were terrifying people who could make the entire jade fluid plane tremor from a simple gesture. However, this supreme realm of cultivation had become only the minimum requirement for this fellow called Yang Yutian to mention his master's name. This astounded Yi Jianpain and the others. They struggled to imagine just how terrifying and proud his master was. That short sentence completely severed Yi Jianpain's intentions of investigating Jianchen. "Oh right, I heard that an extremely grand celebration is going to be held on the Star Brilliance Plain soon. Many peak clans on the Jade Fluid Plain are hurrying over for this celebration, and they seem to be bearing rich gifts as well. May I ask what is happening on the Star Brilliance Plain?" Jianchen took the opportunity to ask this question. He was about to land on the Star Brilliance Plain, so he needed to have some prior knowledge about it. "You actually don't know about something so important?" Fa Yun looked at Jianchen in surprise before explaining patiently and in great detail. The supreme figure of the Star Brilliance Plain, the 9 Brilliant Star Lord, suddenly accepted a foster son 1,000 years ago. As the 9 Brilliant Star Lord never had any children or partners, his foster son naturally became the 9 Brilliant Star Lord's only son. He's known as the Young Star Lord by everyone. In a few years' time, it will be the Young Star Lord's 1,000-year birthday. As a result, many peak organizations across the Saints' world have arranged for their juniors to cross through the distant outer space and arrive on the Star Brilliance Plain to celebrate the Young Star Lord's 1,000th birthday. Just the 1,000-year birthday celebration of the 9 Brilliant Star Lord's foster son has made so many peak organizations across the Saints' world frantically offer up gifts. It looks like the 9 Brilliant Star Lord is definitely a renowned figure who stands at the apex of the Saints' world. Sigh, it's all my master's fault for not telling me about the important and powerful people in the Saints' world, so I didn't even know who the 9 Brilliant Star Lord is, Jianchen said with a sigh. Yi Jianpain chuckled when he heard that and said, "The 9 Brilliant Star Lord is one of the supreme experts who stand at the apex of the Saints' world. He's so powerful that he's a 9th heavenly layer Grand Prime, in existence only second to Grand Exalts." Yi Jianpain continued, "Moreover, the 9 Brilliant Star Lord has another dazzling identity, and that's a Grand Exalt's disciple. He's one of the 3 disciples of the Blood Tier Grand Exalt." What? The 9 Brilliant Star Lord is actually a Grand Exalt's disciple, and that Grand Exalt is the Blood Tier Grand Exalt? Jianchen's heart shuddered. Such a person would definitely be one of the most dazzling figures in the Saints' world as a Grand Exalt's disciple. Moreover, Jianchen had never expected him to be a disciple of the Blood Tier Grand Exalt. Back on the desolate plain, he had faced the Blood Tier Grand Exalt in person. He felt like there was nothing he could hide before a Grand Exalt, which filled Jianchen with chills. Grand Exalts were simply too powerful. They could not be compared to the Grand Primes who chased him around the desolate plain. Even though Jianchen had reached the 14th layer of the chaotic body, and his strength had increased drastically, he had a strong premonition that it would be exactly the same if he faced a Grand Exalt again. He would not even be able to move a finger. As soon as he thought of the Blood Tier Grand Exalt who appeared back then, Jianchen could not help but feel uncertain from the bottom of his heart. He was certain that the Blood Tier Grand Exalt had discovered the twin swords on him. Logically speaking, Grand Exalts would never spare him if his identity was revealed. After all, The twin swords had killed many experts of the Saints' world in the hands of their previous master. However, in reality, the Blood Tier Grand Exalt did not make anything difficult for him. He did not even say anything, leaving mysteriously. He even left the corpse of the strongest existence among the 3 dark gold ape kings of the ancient great apes behind. This filled Jian Chen with uncertainty. "Fellow Yang Yutian," said Fa Yun. He looked at Jian Chen before pausing in hesitance. Jian Chen dismissed his thoughts and put the matter of the Blood Tier Grand Exalt aside. He glanced at Fa Yun and smiled. He asked, "Fa Yun, do you want to buy the God artifact?" Fa Yun nodded. He desired it, but Jian Chen's reserve price was just too high. It was 5,000 5-colored divine crystals. He could not afford such a price no matter what. Even if he borrowed from his companions of the Float Empire, he would struggle to gather it. After a while of thought, Jian Chen said, "Fa Yun, if you want the God artifact, wait until the auction ends." Jian Chen knew the value of 5-colored divine crystals. It was simply too unrealistic for a regular infinite prime without any special background to take out 5,000 of them suddenly. He planned on selling it to Fa Yun privately for a lower price after the auction, as it was unlikely for it to be sold. Although he was uncertain about the true value of a low-quality God artifact, he did not mind it even if he was on the short end of the deal. He only cared about gathering enough 5-colored divine crystals soon. The 9 Brilliance Star Lord dwelled on the Star Brilliance plane, and he had ties with the Blood Tier Grand Exalt. As such, Jian Chen did not want to remain on the Star Brilliance plane for very long. Afterwards, Jian Chen conversed with the Primordial Realm experts a little more before leaving. The interrupted auction on the spatial battleship was about to continue. Soon after Jian Chen's departure, the spectral elder who sat on a jade bed to heal within the spatial battleship suddenly opened his eyes. A strand of extremely obscure senses of the soul came down from the top floor of the spatial battleship, passing on a message to the spectral elder. The spectral elder's face immediately changed drastically when he received the message. He stood up in a hurry and went to find Anya Joyo. "There's horrible news. One of the protectors of the Float Empire had told me that the person auctioning the God artifact is called Yang Yuten. His background is extremely terrifying. It said that none of the organizations on our Jade Fluid plane can afford to offend the person behind him," said the spectral elder grimly. "What? Are you certain?" Anya Juyo was startled as well when he heard that. Although he was arrogant and abusive, that was only before people with backgrounds weaker than him. He would not dare to act like that once he encountered people he could not afford to provoke. He would shy away from them. The spectral elder nodded with absolute certainty. He had already guessed that Jian Chen's background was astonishingly great, and the news from the protectors of the spatial battleship confirmed his guess. He no longer doubted it at all. He had clearly witnessed Jian Chen's extraordinariness through both his astonishing battle prowess and his secret technique that had killed so many Golden Sword beasts in a split second. Neither aspect were things that regular infinite primes could possess. "We need to find a way to recover the situation. We can still make it," muttered the spectral elder quietly. He had already come up with an idea. Before long, the auction interrupted by the Golden Sword beasts finally started up again. It continued from the sale that had not been completed before. Very soon, the auction center was filled with cultivators again. Even though there were fewer people compared to before, it was still packed. The low-quality God artifact that Jian Chen wanted to auction off was placed on the display podium again. "Our Darkness clan will bid 6,000 5-colored divine crystals." However, as soon as the God artifact appeared this time, and before the host could say anything, an old voice rang out from the viewing box of the Darkness clan. The voice came from the spectral elder. He had bid Jian Chen's reserve price right from the start, and he even added 1,000 more 5-colored divine crystals. The auction center immediately fell silent. At that moment, all the cultivators gathered there looked at the viewing box of the Darkness clan. They were extremely stunned. Previously, the Darkness clan had acted unruly and forceful. They secretly controlled the auction and wanted to buy the God artifact for the price of 10 5-colored divine crystals. Everyone had witnessed that before. However, the Darkness clan had suddenly changed their attitude. bidding 6,000 five-colored divine crystals right from the start. It was even higher than the reserve price of the god artifact. Such a contrasting move confused all the cultivators in the auction center. This act did not match up to the behavior of the Darkness clan at all. Jian Chen, who also sat in a viewing box, was slightly surprised as well once he heard the Darkness clan's bid. He was already ready to sell the god artifact to Fa Yun for a lower price once it was passed over in the auction. He had never thought the Darkness clan would actually do this. It had caught him by surprise. You've probably frightened the primordial realm expert of the Darkness clan. He's purposefully expressing his goodwill now, said Kaya. She smiled gently as she sat before Jian Chen. Jian Chen nodded with a smile and said, "This is fine as well. With these 5-colored divine crystals, there's no need for us to linger on the Star Brilliance place at all. We can directly take the teleportation formation there and go to the Prosper Plane." In the end, Jian Chen's low-quality god artifact was purchased by the Darkness clan for 6,000 5-colored divine crystals. As soon as the auction ended, all the people that belonged to peak organizations on the spatial battleship gathered in the viewing box of the Darkness clan, offering up space ring after space ring. Moreover, 2 of the 6 people who served the Float Empire had come as well, offering up a space ring each. It was impossible for the Spectral Elder or Anya Joyo to take out 6,000 5-colored divine crystals. For the sake of gathering this sum, the Spectral Elder had personally taken action, using the name of the Darkness clan to borrow from basically the entire spatial battleship. He only managed to gather this amount using such a method. Chapter 2410, Danger 1. The low-quality god artifact had been purchased by the people of the Darkness clan for 6,000 5-colored divine crystals. This matter surprised everyone. Doubt towards the person who had auctioned off the god artifact followed. Many peak clans from the Jade Fluid Plane were gathered on the spatial battleship. Although many of them did not know about the battle prowess Jian Chen had demonstrated in his battle against the Golden Sword beasts, they were not dim. All of them managed to get an inkling about very important information from the Darkness clan's response. The background of the person who sold the god artifact was so great that even the Darkness clan that ranked 3rd on the Jade Fluid Plane did not dare to offend him. This conclusion immediately unsettled many people from peak organizations. They became uneasy. Quite a few of them had threatened Jian Chen before. However, now that Jian Chen had made the Darkness clan show so much fear, they did not dare to offend him. These people felt like they had caused a huge problem. Fa Yun was troubled on the top floor of the spatial battleship. His face was filled with undisguised dejection. Originally, Jian Chen had told him he would sell the god artifact to him for a low price once it was passed on during the auction. He had been excited about the matter ever since. After all, he still did not have a god artifact despite being a primordial realm expert. Now that he had come across one after so much difficulty, his blood boiled. Moreover, it was a large sword that suited him the most. He was delighted. A god artifact could increase his battle prowess drastically, making him even more powerful. It would elevate his status among the people who served the Float Empire. However, he had not expected the Darkness clan to buy the god artifact for a price of 6,000 5-colored divine crystals to express their goodwill towards Jian Chen. As a result, he lost his chance of obtaining the god artifact. It irritated him. Fa Yen, don't be glum. You serve the Float Empire. The Float Empire does not lack god artifacts. Once you accrue enough service for the Float Empire, you'll be able to redeem a god artifact that suits you perfectly. Another primordial realm expert from the Float Empire comforted Fa Yun. Fa Yun sighed softly. He had already considered redeeming a god artifact, but it would take several thousand years at the very least. He had to watch over spatial battleships the entire time, taking up the role of the spatial battleship's protector. He would clash with various space beasts in outer space often, so who knew when he would die? Naturally, it was better if he could get his hands on a god artifact sooner, as the more powerful he was, the longer he would be able to survive. Sirs, Senior Yang Yutian has arrived. A guard's voice rang out outside. Let him in, said one of the primordial realm experts immediately. Jian Chen's status in the eyes of these primordial realm experts differed drastically from before. There were even 2 or 3 of them who showed undisguised respect as well as some intent to fawn over him. Very soon, Jian Chen walked in. The white-robed Kaya followed him. The primordial realm experts of the Float Empire immediately stood up to welcome him. None of them dared to waste any time. Even the strongest expert of the spatial battleship, Jian Pain, had hurried over. Viyun, although I wasn't expecting the Darkness clan to buy the god artifact, don't worry. I have more god artifacts. Jian Chen cut to the chase after exchanging pleasantries, taking out another god artifact from his space ring. The weapon was also a low-quality god artifact, but it was not a large sword. It was a spear. Jian Chen had obtained all of these god artifacts from the Neptunian Divine Palace. The hearts of the primordial realm experts leapt when they saw Jian Chen casually take out another god artifact. He had too many of them. However, as soon as they considered Jian Chen's background, it all made sense. Fa Yun immediately burned with interest when he saw that Jian Chen still had god artifacts. However, when he saw that the weapon was not a large sword that suited him, he immediately became disappointed, like a deflated balloon. He was not skilled with the spear. Even if he possessed this god artifact, he would not be able to unleash his strength to the fullest. Jian Chen held the spear and said to Fa Yun, "This god artifact isn't a large sword, but its quality is on the same level as the other one. You can exchange this god artifact with the people of the Darkness clan." Fa Yun's eyes lit up when he heard that. He asked eagerly, "Fellow Yang Yutin, may I ask how much you plan on selling this god artifact for?" Afterwards, Jian Chen and Fa Yun negotiated a price. In the end, Jian Chen decided to sell the spear to Fa Yun for 3,000 5-colored divine crystals. Fa Yun only managed to gather 3,000 5-colored divine crystals by borrowing over 2,000 of them from his 5 companions. He purchased it from Jian Chen. Jian Chen made 9,000 5-colored divine crystals from 2 low-quality god artifacts. The auction center, due to what happened earlier, did not take any commission from Jian Chen. Jian Chen took the 9,000 5-colored divine crystals and returned to his cabin with Kaya. He no longer stayed at the high-class cabin. Instead, he moved to a luxurious cabin that the primordial realm experts of the Float Empire provided to him for free. Jian Chen, 6,000 5-colored divine crystals are already enough for us to take the teleportation formation to the Prosper Plane. Why did you sell the second god artifact? God artifacts are treasures that people can only wish for, Kaya asked out of uncertainty as soon as they returned to their cabin. It's for my sister. If my sister wants to recover her cultivation, she requires an extremely tremendous amount of cultivation resources. Even if Protector Shui breaks through to the primordial realm, she won't be able to gather up a lot in a short amount of time. I obviously have to find ways to prepare some for my sister now that I have the ability. These god artifacts are useless weapons in my hands. I would much rather turn them into cultivation resources so that my sister can recover her cultivation as soon as possible. If it weren't for the measly number of primordial realm experts on this spatial battleship and that they can't take out so many 5-colored divine crystals, I would have sold all the god artifacts on me, said Jian Chen. He had already learnt from Protector Shui that his sister, Changyang Mingyue, had some past grievances with the First Majesty of the Heavenly Palace of Bisheng. As such, he did not dare to ask their First Majesty, Hyexin, to help out his sister once he arrived on the Prosper Plane to return the Aneta Tower. He did not even dare to disclose anything about his sister to the First Majesty. After all, he did not know the First Majesty of the Heavenly Palace of Bisheng. He was afraid the First Majesty would add insult to injury once she learnt about his sister's situation and harm her. As a result, he could only rely on himself if he wanted to help his sister recover as quickly as possible. There are a few more years before the spatial battleship arrives on the Star Brilliance plane. As soon as we arrive, we'll leave through a teleportation formation and go to the Prosper Plane, thought Jian Chen. He had already accumulated enough 5-colored divine crystals to go to the Prosper Plane through a teleportation formation with the sale of the 2 low-quality god artifacts. However, at this moment, a great sense of danger suddenly sprang up in Jian Chen's heart, immediately making him uneasy. "Oh no, we're probably in trouble." Jian Chen's heart leapt as he became extremely stern. He had no idea where the sense of danger came from, but he deeply understood that his senses seemed to have become extraordinarily powerful after a strand of chaotic force fused with his soul. At this moment he felt an ill foreboding. A great danger was definitely approaching. Moreover, the danger would be so great that it would be very difficult for him to make it out alive despite his current level of cultivation. Chapter 2411, Danger 2. Kaya, we can't remain on this spatial battleship. We must leave immediately. Jian Chen made a decision on the spot. He made his way out with Kaya, finding the experts from the Float Empire once again. "What did you say, fellow Yang Yutian? You want to leave the spatial battleship right now?" One of them was immediately surprised when he learnt of Jian Chen's intentions. Although Infinite Prime's experts could travel through outer space, it was definitely not as safe as remaining on a spatial battleship. Moreover, the spatial battleship was much faster than Infinite Prime's. It was impossible for experts below Chaotic Prime to outspeed the ship. They were just about to reach the Star Brilliance plane, yet Jian Chen said he wanted to leave. This confused the experts of the Float Empire. "I have something I must attend to. I won't be going to the Star Brilliance plane," Jian Chen said without going into too much detail. Formations enveloped the spatial battleship as it traveled, sealing up the entire ship. If he wanted to leave, he needed the protectors to stop the ship and open the formations. "If that's the case, take care." The protector did not say much. He immediately ordered the ship to be stopped and the formations to be opened, letting Jian Chen and Kaya leave. If someone else requested this, he would have never agreed, as not only would they waste quite a lot of time if the ship was stopped, but they would also have to waste a sizable amount of energy to accelerate once again. However, Jian Chen's status was extraordinary in the hearts of the protectors. Coupled with his strength, they naturally did not dare to decline his request. Jian Chen and Kaya left the spatial battleship. After that, Jian Chen took out a smaller spaceship from his space ring. They quickly flew off in another direction, vanishing very soon. Half a day after Jian Chen and Kaya's departure, the huge spatial battleship suddenly shook violently. The space around the ship seemed to have suddenly condensed from a tremendous pressure. It was as if the ship was moving through mud. It faced great resistance, moving slower and slower before coming to a grinding halt in the end. In the next moment, a blue ocean appeared in the surroundings. It seemed like a tremendous ocean. Seawater churned and waves collided within it. The ocean had abruptly appeared in such a strange fashion in outer space, enveloping the spatial battleship. The spatial battleship was like a tiny, lone boat in the strange ocean. It seemed insignificant. In just a single moment, it was swallowed by the blue ocean, completely vanishing. From afar, it was possible to see that the blue ocean had formed a giant sphere. It wrapped around the spatial battleship completely. The ocean was not regular seawater. Instead, it had been condensed from terrifying energy and the power of laws. It possessed a tremendous pressure. The pressure alone was enough to make the protective formations around the spatial battleship to shake violently, causing them to rapidly disperse. The 6 primordial realm experts who served the Float Empire immediately sensed the situation outside on the highest floor of the spatial battleship. All of their faces changed drastically, becoming filled with fright and shock. Even Yi Jianpain lost his usual composure, becoming extremely stern. "We're from the Float Empire of the Jade Fluid Plane. Please show mercy, Senior." Yi Jianpain and his 5 companions cried out and arrived on the deck as quickly as they could. "We're from the Darkness Clan of the Jade Fluid Plane. The most favored son of our patriarch, young Master Anya Joyo, is on this spatial battleship. Senior, please show mercy." The spectral elder also charged over as quickly as he could, immediately stating his identity. "We're from the Myriad Water Estate of the Jade Fluid Plane." At the same time, all the peak clans on the spatial battleship received the message from Yi Jianpain and the others, so they hurried to the deck and stated their origins. Soon, all the primordial realm experts as the representatives of the various peak organizations had gathered on the deck. They all stared at the blue ocean around the spatial battleship and paled. They could clearly sense a terrifying pressure enough to make the depths of their souls shake from the ocean. A figure appeared from the blue ocean. He stood with his arms behind his back, and he completely fused with the colossal ocean. He was a hook-nosed old man with short hair. He looked at the spatial battleship below him, and undisguised excitement filled his eyes. He was the Elder of Mountains and Seas. However, the Elder of Mountains and Seas seemed rather haggard. It was like he was not at his peak condition and was injured instead. Clearly, the Elder of Mountains and Seas had been injured in his battle against the Golden Sword Beast Sovereign. Hee, Jianchen, I've finally caught up with you. As long as I capture you and get the Anata Tower from you, it'll be worth it even if I ended up getting injured by the Golden Sword Beast, thought the Elder of Mountains and Seas. Thanks to his innate ability, he had caught up with the spatial battleship. He was confident that Jianchen was on the ship. Senior, we're going to the Star Brilliance plane to celebrate the young Star Lord's birthday. If you kill us here, not only will it be a slap to the young Star Lord's face, but you'll put the young Star Lord's birthday celebration in jeopardy as well, someone called out from the spatial battleship. They hoped the Elder of Mountains and Seas would retreat after knowing what he was dealing with. Offending the young Star Lord was basically offending the 9 Brilliance Star Lord. Who was the 9 Brilliance Star Lord? Not only was he a disciple of the Blood Tier Grand Exalt, but his personal cultivation was close to perfection as well. He had become a 9th Heavenly Layer Grand Prime many years ago, making him one of the most powerful experts below Grand Exalt. Hee, don't worry. I have no interest in you. I've come for someone else, sniggered the Elder of Mountains and Seas. May I ask who Senior is looking for? We'll hand them over immediately, said one of the protectors of the Float Empire. The Elder of Mountains and Seas shook his head and smiled strangely. You really won't be able to find this person. Only when I personally take action will I be able to pick him out from the crowd. With that, the Elder of Mountains and Seas closed his eyes and used his innate ability again, sensing for Jianchen's position. There were simply too many cultivators on the spatial battleship, and Jianchen had the disguise from a treasure. As a result, the Elder of Mountains and Seas was unable to tell who was Jianchen from the crowd either. He could only use his innate ability. However, his face changed slightly very soon. Suddenly, he turned his head and looked in another direction. His sharp gaze seemed to be able to pierce through space and see the depths of the cosmos. What a scheming brat. He's actually not on this ship. But since you've already caught my eye, you're done for. The Elder of Mountains and Seas gritted his teeth. He did not remain where he was for a second longer, vanishing in a single moment. With his departure, the endless ocean that surrounded the spatial battleship disappeared as well. The terrifying pressure was gone in a single moment. All the cultivators on the deck became relieved now that the spatial battleship had broken free. They felt like they had just survived a great danger. Grand Prime. The Senior earlier was a Grand Prime, said Jianping grimly as he stared in the direction that the Elder of Mountains and Seas had vanished. Grand Prime? But who was he looking for? It looked like he definitely came with ill intentions, said the spectral Elder of the Darkness clan grimly. The direction that he has left in us seems to be the same as fellow Yang Yutians. At this moment, Fa Yun cried out. Chapter 24:12. Pursuit in outer space. Jianping and the other primordial realm experts from the Float Empire looked over as well. Their eyes narrowed slightly. They had not been paying much attention earlier, but now that Fa Yun had brought it up, they realized that the Elder of Mountains and Seas had really traveled off in the same direction as Yang Yutian, who had a mysterious background. At that moment, all the primordial realm experts on the spatial battleship thought of the same time. That terrifying Grand Prime was chasing Yang Yutian. Moreover, he did not seem to have good intentions. He was cold. This chase was very likely to be chasing to kill. This has nothing to do with us. Let's all go back and start up the battleship so that we can continue on our way. At this moment, Jianping swung his hand and left. With his departure, The primordial realm experts from the Float Empire and the people of various peak organizations gathered on the deck returned to the cabins. Yang Yutian, I wish you luck. Fa Yun roughly gazed in the direction that Jian Chen had left in. After a soft prayer, he left the deck as well. Jian Chen had sold a god artifact to him for a lower price, and Fa Yun had used this god artifact to successfully exchange for the two-handed sword in the Darkness Clan's possession. As a result, he finally owned a low-quality god artifact that suited him. He felt some gratitude towards Jian Chen. Now, it was extremely likely that Jian Chen faced the pursuit of a Grand Prime, so he could only pray for him secretly. At this moment, a tiny spaceship only several dozen meters long tore through the pitch-black outer space as a streak of silver light, moving with great speed. Jian Chen and Kaya were grim as they piloted the spaceship, moving forwards as quickly as they could. A meter-wide piece of supreme-grade divine crystal was placed on a formation in the spaceship. The tremendous energy within the supreme-grade divine crystal was rapidly drained away by the formation, propelling the spaceship forwards. A block of supreme-grade divine crystal was equivalent to 1,000,000 standard-sized divine crystals. In the eyes of many god kings, this block of supreme-grade divine crystal was wealth that they could not afford to ignore, yet Jian Chen had used it as just a source of energy to propel the spaceship forwards. The sense of danger is becoming greater and greater. I wonder who's chasing us, Jian Chen muttered as he stared straight ahead. Although he could not see who was chasing him, he firmly believed the sudden ill omen he felt. We've already left the spatial battleship, but the person still tails us closely. We can basically be certain that he has come for us, and he's obviously not targeting me but you. Kaya looked at Jian Chen. At this moment, her senses were even sharper than his. She could vaguely sense a powerful presence rapidly approaching them from an extremely distant region of space. Moreover, she could even vaguely sense the person's precise location. It felt like her soul had fused with the cosmos such that her senses were even greater than Jian Chen's. However, she would not always possess this ability. It only happened from time to time. Moreover, she discovered that her strength did not change at all even when her senses strengthened. But I'm wearing a mask that can completely conceal my presence. Even if peak experts stand before me, they won't be able to tell who I am. How did the person behind us find me? Moreover, we're already so far from the desolate plain. Jian Chen was also in doubt. He could not understand this no matter how he thought about it. After all, he had worn the mask for many years on the desolate plain, preventing the Grand Primes from finding him at all, so why did he suddenly catch someone's eye now that he was off the desolate plain? These peak experts all have exceptional abilities and countless methods to achieve what they want. Even if you wear your mask, you won't be able to achieve true flawlessness. Perhaps, they had some methods of bypassing your disguise and finding you among the sea of people, said Kaya. At this moment, Kaya suddenly let out a sound of surprise. A strange light appeared in her eyes. What happened? Jian Chen looked at Kaya. Kaya said softly, the person who's chasing us is veering off in the wrong direction. He's following the direction that we left the spatial battleship before, and he's traveling straight. He hasn't altered his direction. You can sense his precise location? Jian Chen's eyes lit up. He already knew Kaya's senses were extremely powerful such that even the Aneta Tower was not enough to block them. However, he never expected them to be so astonishing. Even he was unable to correctly sense the location of the expert behind him, yet Kaya could. This ability was just too shocking. Kaya nodded and said, he has stopped. The light in Jian Chen's eyes flickered. He did not say anything in response. However, a short while later, Kaya's face changed slightly. She cried out, oh no, he's moving again. He's moving towards our current location. He has located us precisely. With that, Jian Chen immediately controlled the direction of the spaceship, heading off in a different direction. An hour later, Kaya said, the person has passed by where we were before, but he did not stop. Instead, he kept flying. He's getting further and further away from us. Jian Chen was secretly astonished. Kaya's senses were so powerful that they were unimaginable. After all, Even his soul that had fused with a strand of true chaotic force was unable to sense someone so far away. You're right. That person indeed has a wondrous method to bypass the mask and find us, Jianchen growled. He was extremely stern. He has stopped again. He's heading in our current direction again. Afterwards, Kaya constantly reminded Jianchen and paid attention to the location of the person. Jianchen changed directions again and again. After changing directions several times, Jianchen was finally certain about one thing. The mysterious expert chasing them was unable to sense their locations at all times. Instead, he needed to stop once in a while and use some unknown secret technique to relocate them. However, even with that being the case, the distance between them was gradually being closed. The mysterious expert was just too fast. The smaller spaceship could not match the larger spatial battleship in terms of speed, so he was obviously unable to shake the expert off. Why do I feel like this ability is similar to Heiya's? Jianchen thought. Afterwards, with a thought, he immediately let out Heiya. Heiya was a primordial realm expert now. Obviously, he saw Jianchen as soon as he emerged. As Jianchen wore a mask, both his appearance and stature were different, so Heiya failed to recognize Jianchen immediately. He was slightly surprised. Heiya, immediately use your innate ability and see if you can sense my location. Jianchen cut right to the case. Your master? Heiya immediately determined Jianchen's identity from that. Alright, let me try. Afterwards, Heiya closed his eyes and began using his innate ability. Jianchen stared directly at Heiya. He knew that Heiya's innate ability allowed him to find anyone he had seen, no matter where they were. I wonder if Senior Mo Tianyun's mask can cover me from an innate ability like Heiya's, Jianchen wondered. Chapter 24:13. The Fruit of Ways is ripening. A while later, Heiya stopped using his innate ability. He opened his eyes slowly. His gaze towards Jianchen contained a sliver of hesitation. He said, Master, I can only sense your position roughly, and it's sometimes wrong. My innate ability seems to be under the influence of a mysterious power, making things seem hazy. It's not as easy as finding others. Perhaps my senses have become blurry due to Master's increase in strength. My innate ability isn't actually effective against everyone. Once I encounter someone who's far more powerful than me, my innate ability will become useless. Heiya, then do you know any methods to avoid being detected by your innate ability? Jianchen asked. Now, he was basically certain that the mysterious expert who pursued him possessed a similar ability to Heiya. Heiya's senses were very blurry because of the difference in strength. The person who chased them was a peak expert, so sensing their position was obviously a piece of cake with his impressive level of cultivation. Heiya furrowed his brows and pondered for a while before shaking his head to express that he did not know. A sliver of disappointment appeared in Jianchen's eyes. He let Heiya back into the divine hall. Although Heiya was also a primordial realm expert, there was nothing he could do to help out given the current situation. Jianchen, the mysterious expert, is getting closer and closer to us. Once we enter the range of the senses of his soul, he'll lock onto our position firmly. We'll be caught up in a split second, said Kaya. She was also worried. Currently, they were located beyond the range of a regular Grand Prime's senses of the soul, so the Elder of Mountains and Seas was unable to find their precise location. He could only constantly use his innate ability to sense for them. However, if they were closer and the Elder of Mountains and Seas' senses of the soul had locked onto them, the Elder of Mountains and Seas would only need a single moment to stop Jianchen and Kaya. We can only leave this place now and enter a spatial crack, Jianchen said coldly with determination. Afterwards, he left the tiny spaceship and appeared in outer space. Wielding the shining 9-star sword of heavenly ways, he ripped open a gash that was several meters long in space. Let's go! Jianchen called out. He stowed the 9-star sword of heavenly ways away and entered the crack with Kaya. The spatial crack was filled with terrifying streams of energy and temporal vortices, making it extremely dangerous. Even primordial realm experts would face life-threatening danger in here. Jianchen became cautious after he entered the spatial crack. Even after reaching the 14th layer of the chaotic body and possessing battle prowess that could match up to 6th heavenly layer infinite primes, he did not dare to act recklessly here. I hope we can shake him off here, thought Jianchen. Then he took out the Enata tower and entered it with Kaya. He moved through the spatial crack as quickly as he could by relying on the Enata tower's toughness. Probably only peak god artifacts as powerful as the Enata tower could move through somewhere as dangerous as a spatial crack fearlessly. Soon after Jianchen and Kaya entered the spatial crack, the Elder of Mountains and Seas appeared where they were before. He closed his eyes and sensed for them for a while before becoming surprised. He murmured, "They've actually vanished. I can't sense their location anymore. It looks like they really have sensed me, which was why they constantly changed directions. How did they find out?" The Elder of Mountains and Seas gradually smiled coldly. "But that doesn't matter. They definitely won't be able to escape from me." With that, the Elder of Mountains and Seas' gaze immediately deepened. Laws interwove, and the ways changed in his eyes, becoming mysterious. His gaze seemed to see through the source of time, allowing him to peer into the past and future and witness the supreme mysteries of the world. It seemed like the many secrets of the world were clearly presented before him. The Elder of Mountains and Seas was a grand prime. He had comprehended the laws to an extremely deep level. Even though he was nowhere close to Grand Exalts, who had basically become the heavenly ways, he was still extremely powerful. He knew various unbelievable and exceptional techniques. Very soon, the Elder of Mountains and Seas' gaze returned to normal. As if he had discovered where Jianchen and Kaya were when they left, he sneered and also ripped open space, entering a spatial crack. The Elder of Mountains and Seas was still able to sense Jianchen's position within the spatial crack. However, the laws were chaotic, and the environment was horrendous, affecting his ability quite a lot. As a result, he needed a little more time to use his ability whenever he activated it. Up ahead, Jianchen and Kaya piloted the Enata tower to travel at full speed, constantly changing directions. This person definitely isn't as fast as the Azure Prince King. Hopefully, we can shake him off here, Jianchen thought, but very soon, the sense of danger appeared again. This made his heart sink. Clearly, they were being chased once again. Immediately, he controlled the Enata tower to charge towards the most dangerous places. He headed towards the temporal vortices. He could clearly remember that this was how he had managed to shake off the Azure Prince King last time. Immediately, the Enata tower turned into a golden streak of light and passed through temporal vortex after temporal vortex. It was a good idea, but the Elder of Mountains and Seas was not the Azure Prince King in the end. When he chased them and encountered the temporal vortices, he would avoid them cleverly. He did not charge through them recklessly like the Azure Prince King. If he wanted to dodge, the temporal vortices would not be able to do anything to him with his cultivation as a Grand Prime. Even if he could not avoid them, he could simply take a detour. Even when he had to avoid the temporal vortices, it would not take up too much of his time. At most, he would just catch up to Jianchen a little later. The Elder of Mountains and Seas was evidently more careful than the Azure Prince King. As a result, Jianchen's idea was not particularly effective. His distance from the Elder of Mountains and Seas closed bit by bit. If this continued, being caught was only a matter of time. At the same time, a figure sat in the air within a majestic palace that stood at the very center of the Prosper Plain. The endless light from the ways surrounded and masked his figure, causing him to be blurry and hazy. However, this person seemed to give off a terrifying presence enough to make the world tremble. Just by sitting in the air, it seemed like the entire world, the entire universe, knelt below his feet. It was as if he was the supreme ruler of the world. It was as if he was the only god in the world. At this moment, he opened his eyes slowly. They were a pair of cold, emotionless eyes. He gazed ahead leisurely. Right before him, the space suddenly twisted and turned into a mirror. Within the mirror was the scene of Jianchen and the Elder of Mountains and Seas moving through the spatial crack. Whether it be the Enata tower that constantly changed direction or the pursuing Elder of Mountains and Seas, they were all presented clearly. The cold gaze landed on the Eneta Tower. His gaze seemed to be able to penetrate the Eneta Tower and see all the things going on in there. "The fruit of ways is ripening," he murmured. His voice seemed to possess all the sounds in the world, making it impossible to distinguish his gender. Afterwards, he closed his eyes slowly, and the scene conjured before him vanished as well. Chapter 24:14. From the Moon God Hall? Within the spatial crack, the damaged Eneta Tower had already shrunk to the size of a fist. They traveled as quickly as they could in a zigzagging fashion. No matter how powerful the streams of energy were, no matter how terrifying the temporal vortices were, the Eneta Tower would not try to avoid them. It flew as a faint golden streak of light. It specially traveled towards the more dangerous places. The Eneta Tower was truly able to rampage about fearlessly like a bull in this chaotic space where even primordial realm experts had to be cautious. Nothing could stop it. The laws within the spatial cracks were incomplete. The 5 elements were reversed, and yin and yang were a mess. The sense of time did not exist. Jianchen and Kaya had charged through many dangerous regions for who knows how long, but the sense of danger remained in Jianchen's heart. This allowed Jianchen to understand that he had not managed to shake off the peak expert behind him. Instead, the distance between them gradually lessened. "Let's leave this place." Jianchen knew that he could not continue on like this. He immediately made a decision and emerged from the Eneta Tower. Wielding the 9-star sword of heavenly ways, he slashed out as hard as he could under the illumination of countless stars. Immediately, the space before him twisted violently, and a crack was ripped open. Powerful pulses of energy scattered out in the surroundings with sword chi. At that moment, the unstable space became affected and became even more chaotic. Many streams of energy surged out in the surroundings, ramming into Jianchen with force that could make even primordial realm experts pale. However, Jianchen's body only shook a little. The terrifying streams of energy did not harm him at all. The 14th layer of the chaotic body had gifted Jianchen with unimaginable toughness. Even though the streams of energy were very powerful and could even heavily injure some infinite primes, it was nowhere close to harming Jianchen. Jianchen ignored the streams of energy that battered him. He just grabbed the fist-sized Eneta Tower. Without any hesitation, he entered the crack with a flash and returned to the Eneta Tower. Afterwards, he took out the small spaceship again, entered it, and continued on his way. Kaya emerged from the Eneta Tower and stood within the spaceship with Jianchen, constantly paying attention to the expert behind them. "The person behind us should catch up very soon. He has a secret technique to sense my position, so we can't shake him off. All we can do now is find a teleportation formation as quickly as possible and venture to the Prosper Plane," Jianchen said sternly before immediately taking out a star chart. He looked for the closest teleportation formation that could take him to other planes. The star chart was clearly labeled with the 49 great planes and 81 great planets of the Saints' world. Some regions in space occupied by powerful space beasts were noted as well. Even though it was incomplete, it was like a guiding lantern in the dark. It was extremely useful. The place closest to us is actually the Star Brilliance plane. It's only slightly closer than other places. Jianchen found their current location very quickly and immediately changed directions, charging off in a straight line. The peaceful period was very short. After 3 days of peaceful travel, Kaya warned him again, and Jianchen felt an ill omen as well. He knew the expert had locked onto their direction. Immediately, he used the same trick as before, fleeing into a spatial crack and moving through it in the Eneta Tower. Jianchen really is a slippery little worm. A while later, the Elder of Mountains and Seas appeared where Jianchen had vanished. He stared at the space before him as he ground his teeth. He could not understand how Jianchen was able to sense him when he concealed his presence and purposefully covered all of his traces. "It's a pity that I couldn't lock onto you with the senses of my soul, or it would have been impossible for you to run for so long with your strength," said the Elder of Mountains and Sea resentfully. Although he was a Grand Prime, and the senses of his soul were extremely powerful, Jianchen maintained a distance that was beyond his range the entire time. Moreover, All secret techniques that could peer into matters were useless when it came to Jianchen, forcing the Elder of Mountains and Seas to rely on his innate ability. He was unable to locate Jianchen. However, when he arrived at Jianchen's previous location with the use of his innate ability, Jianchen would have changed directions already. If he continued onwards in a straight line, it would be extremely likely for him to deviate from Jianchen, widening their distance as a result. As a result, he was forced to sense for Jianchen's position again every once in a while. It became several times more arduous for him, a grand prime, to catch up to Jianchen, who was only an infinite prime in outer space. Suddenly, space was ripped open, and the Elder of Mountains and Seas followed Jianchen, entering a spatial crack again. Their chase continued in the horrible environment of the spatial crack. Jianchen sensed it soon after the Elder of Mountains and Seas entered the spatial crack. He was unable to locate the Elder of Mountains and Seas, but the danger he sensed grew in intensity. This time, he was clearly much more composed. He piloted the Anata Tower to continue on his way calmly. At this moment, Jianchen's eyes suddenly narrowed. He discovered a corpse slowly drifting over up ahead. Even though the corpse was completely lifeless, it still gave off a dense pressure. Under Jianchen's control, the Anata Tower stopped before the corpse. Jianchen pulled the corpse into the Anata Tower before continuing on his way. The corpse that Jianchen had pulled in laid on the ground stiffly. It was the body of a middle-aged man with 4 eyes. Clearly, he belonged to a separate race. There was a finger-sized hole between his eyes, piercing through his entire head. His soul had already been destroyed. 9th Heavenly Layer Infinite Prime. Jianchen was slightly shocked when he studied the corpse. He immediately determined the man's cultivation. He was actually on the same level as Jianpain from the spatial battleship. What shocked him even more was that the man was seemingly killed with a single attack. Even a 9th Heavenly Layer Infinite Prime had been killed with a single attack. Just how powerful was his killer? Were they a chaotic prime? A grand prime? However, Jianchen was not concerned with this issue. He looked at one of the corpse's fingers, specifically the space ring on his index finger. Although the primordial realm expert had died, his space ring was not taken away. The light in Jianchen's eyes flickered, and he slowly removed the space ring. He checked its contents with the senses of his soul. Immediately, a dazzling array of items were presented before Jianchen. The dead man was extremely wealthy. He had countless god-tier pills and heavenly resources that were stacked up in a huge pile. He even had over 3,000 5-colored divine crystals. At this moment, Jianchen's eyes suddenly narrowed. With a flip of his hand, he removed a hand-sized medallion from the space ring. The medallion was white and lustrous. It shone with a faint glow like the moon. A large moon was imprinted on it. What caught Jianchen's attention were the 3 words carved fancily onto one side of the medallion, Moon God Hall. The Moon God Hall? Jianchen murmured. Fairy Hao Yu in snow-white clothes suddenly appeared in his head. Fairy Hao Yu had left the cloud plane many years ago. She ventured to the ice pole plane, and there had been no news of her ever since. Who knows how she was doing now? For a moment, Jianchen fell into a daze as he stared at the 3 large words on the medallion. He played around with it and unintentionally saw its back. The back of the medallion also had 3 large words, Nan Patian. Nan Patian. Jianchen's heart suddenly shuddered when he saw this. His eyes shone brightly. He had heard of this name many times from Fairy Hao Yu. He was the greatest enemy of Fairy Hao Yu. He was even the person responsible for Fairy Hao Yu's sole arrival on the Tianyuan continent. Now that Nan Potion's name had actually appeared behind the medallion, Jianchen completely understood what it represented. Nan Patian was now in charge of the Moon God Hall. Does this person come from the Moon God Hall? Who killed him? Was it Fairy Hao Yu? Or was it someone else? Jianchen looked at the corpse once again, and his feelings immediately became mixed. Back on the cloud plane, Fairy Hao Yu had become especially powerful after she recovered. She had killed her way into the Empyrean demon cult alone. Even when the 3 vice leaders worked together, they could do nothing to her. In the end, she punched a hole through the headquarters of the Empyrean demon cult and basically swaggered out. Now, after so many years, Fairy Hao-yu had probably become a chaotic prime. Nan Patian of the Moon God Hall was a peak chaotic prime already many years ago. I wonder if he has broken through to Grand Prime now. However, even if Nan Patian hasn't broken through, it's impossible for Fairy Hao-yu to be his opponent. I hope Fairy Hao-yu is safe, Jianchen thought as he worried for her safety. However, he also understood that he himself was in trouble right now and would not necessarily survive. He was currently being chased by a mysterious expert, so he was in no shape to help Fairy Hao-yu. I can only hurry to the Prosper Plane as quickly as I can. As long as I personally return the Anata Tower to the Heavenly Palace of Bishing, the merit will be very great. Not only will I be able to exchange for a large amount of cultivation resources for my sister, but I'll also be able to spare the effort to help out Fairy Hao-yu. With the strength of the Heavenly Palace of Bishing, settling the Moon God Hall's problems is only a matter of a single sentence. Jianchen became eager. He wanted to reach the Heavenly Palace of Bishing immediately. At this moment, Jianchen flipped his hand, and a single talisman appeared in his hands. Is this a cosmic movement talisman? Jianchen's eyes lit up as he stared at it. He had obtained several cosmic movement talismans from the Grand Prime's space ring back in the Neptunian Divine Palace. Those cosmic movement talismans were of extremely high quality. They could transport people incredibly far away. Once they were activated, it was even possible to escape from regular Grand Primes. Now that he had found a talisman that was basically the same as them, Jianchen immediately rejoiced. The mysterious expert pursuing them could find his position in the sea of stars with precision through a wondrous secret technique. Jianchen could not shake him off no matter how he tried. The appearance of the cosmic movement talisman was basically giving him exactly what he needed when he needed it the most. No, this cosmic movement talisman is of a very low quality. It can't be compared to the ones I obtained from the Neptunian Divine Palace. However, very soon, Jianchen sighed in disappointment. The quality of the cosmic movement talisman was insufficient, let alone the fact that it could not transport them very far away. Even when he activated it, it was extremely likely for foreign powers to interfere with it, causing it to fail. As a result, he might have been able to escape from some chaotic primes with the cosmic movement talisman, but it would be far too difficult to escape from Grand Primes using it. Jianchen, he's catching up, Kaya warned at this moment. With that, Jianchen stowed the cosmic movement talisman away and ripped open space, returning to the Saint's world. Very soon, this flight and pursuit had already lasted for half a year. In order to avoid the Elder of Mountains and Seas, Jianchen alternated between the Saint's world and the spatial cracks, maintaining a certain distance from the Elder of Mountains and Seas the entire time, avoiding the range of the senses of his soul. During this time, the Elder of Mountains and Seas had used hastening secret techniques several times to lock onto Jianchen with the senses of his soul. Unfortunately, Jianchen had Kaya. Kaya's senses were unimaginably powerful, locating the Elder of Mountains and Seas precisely. She would always be able to remind Jianchen before his arrival, which caused the Elder of Mountains and Seas much anger. Jianchen, even if you flee to the ends of the world, you won't be able to escape from me, the Elder of Mountains and Seas roared out furiously from behind. He had gradually become impatient after half a year of pursuit. He became agitated. The longer he took, the worse it would be for him. Once other experts received the news, all of this would end up as wasted effort. There are 2 more days until we arrive on the Star Brilliance plane. A small spaceship tore through the dark outer space, moving with great speeds. Jianchen looked at his star chart inside the spaceship and finally became relieved. Once they reached the Star Brilliance plane, they could just leave through a teleportation formation. By then, even Grand Primes would not be able to catch up to him. Teleportation formations across planes were faster than almost all Grand Primes. Jianchen felt extremely fortunate along the way, as the location when he returned to the Saint's world through a spatial crack would be unstable. Shifts were commonplace. They could even be taken to forbidden regions in space. These forbidden regions of space were places where space beast sovereigns resided. Even many Grand Primes would not have the courage to venture into such places. However, he had not experienced too great of a shift every time he returned to the Saint's world from the spatial cracks. He remained in the surroundings of the Star Brilliance plane, and the shifts even allowed his smaller spaceship to reach the Star Brilliance plane a few years earlier than the larger spatial battleship from the Jade Fluid plane. "The Star Brilliance plane is right ahead," said Jianqin. He felt a sense of relief. He could clearly see the tremendous plain of land that belonged to the Star Brilliance plane. Due to being too far away, the Star Brilliance plane was only the size of a fingernail to Jianqin right now. It was like a piece of earth, floating quietly in outer space without moving at all. The Heavenly King of Azure Brilliance could cross this distance in a single moment, but Jianqin needed 2 days. Looking at the Star Brilliance plane up ahead, Kaya, who stood beside Jianqin, did not seem to lighten up at all. Instead, it seemed like something was weighing on her mind. This was because she experienced an intense sense of threat during this entire half a year. The threat was so great that she felt like she was facing the heavens, where there was nowhere she could hide. The only thing she could do was wait for its arrival and accept it. At this moment, Kaya suddenly looked at Jianqin. The light in her eyes flickered as she hesitated. It was as if there was something she wanted to say to Jianqin, but she struggled to open her mouth about it. "Kaya, what's the matter?" Jianqin was an infinite prime now. He was so powerful that even though he placed all his attention on the Star Brilliance plane, he still sensed that there was something off with Kaya. Kaya turned away and looked at the Star Brilliance plane as if she was avoiding Jianqin's gaze. After a while of silence, she finally worked up the courage and said softly, "Jianqin, there's something I've actually always wanted to ask you, but I never dared to. Originally, I planned on burying it in my heart without anyone knowing, but I have an intense feeling that if I don't say it now, I might not get a chance to in the future." Jianqin was surprised when he heard that. He glanced at Kaya deeply and remained silent. He was not dim. He could clearly tell what Kaya was trying to say from her tone and expression. Kaya had clearly fallen in love with him. This troubled Jianqin. He actually had no idea how to handle this situation. Kaya was born in the sea realm in the lower world. Jianqin could still clearly remember the first time he met Kaya. Back then, he and newbies sought refuge in the sea realm to avoid the many experts of the beast god continent. Back then, Kaya was the daughter of a patriarch of a tribe within the sea realm. They had been brought together through some crystal coins, which led to everything else that followed. Afterwards, he obtained the Octaterra Emperor's cultivation method and passed it to Kaya, but unexpectedly, it caused the destruction of Kaya's tribe. The entire tribe was exterminated, forcing Kaya to flee into a danger zone of the sea realm to survive. Many years later, when Kaya emerged from the zone of danger, not only did her strength increase drastically, but she had even tamed a true divine beast, the seven-colored heaven-devouring beast. As a result, she stood at the apex of the Tianyuan continent. Afterwards, she was heavily injured in the war against the world of Forsaken Saints and was unconscious ever since. In order to heal Kaya, he brought her to the Saints' world and only managed to save her after strenuous effort. Jianqin admitted that he had gone to great lengths to awaken Kaya, even risking his life to venture into the Een Mountains of Seven's Despair just to look for heavenly resources that could heal the soul. Although he had done a lot for Kaya, he only treated her as his best friend. He felt no attraction towards her. He had never expected Kaya to actually fall in love with him. "Kaya, you've known me for quite some time. You should understand me," said Jianqin slowly after a while of thought. His voice contained deep powerlessness. Some matters could not be prevented, such as Kaya falling in love with him. It was impossible for him to prevent that. As a matter of fact, it would have been better if he did not know this. He had always treated Kaya as his best friend. He did that since the Tianyuan continent. Especially when the two of them had fled the cloud plain due to Huai An's pursuit, the hardships and difficulties they experienced along the way had deepened their friendship. Of course, it was only friendship. It was exactly because of this friendship that he was unwilling to harm Kaya at all. Hence, he felt powerless about Kaya's love towards him. Kaya was in low spirits. She did not look at Jianchen and looked at the pitch-black space gloomily instead. Jianchen, do you feel that I'm not pretty enough? Kaya asked gently. She revealed her true feelings. She had said something she had kept buried in her heart for many years, causing all the feelings she had repressed during those years to suddenly erupt like a volcano. It was extremely intense. At that moment, she seemed to have become fearless. She felt no shyness about being a woman. She had gained courage. Jianchen sighed gently. The suddenness of the matter had caught him off guard. Unprepared, he was immediately left at a loss about how to handle this situation. Even though Kaya's appearance was not alluring, she was still rather pretty. She was not as ugly as she believed herself to be. Of course, Jianchen had already seen through materialistic concepts at his level of cultivation. Appearances were nothing to him. No matter how beautiful someone was on the outside, that was only surface level. Once the surface was removed, they were just a combination of flesh and bone. As a result, Jianchen had already broken free from the outlook of mortals with his current level of cultivation. He found no difference in beauty and ugliness. However, Kaya was a god king, yet she still cared about her appearance. This made Jianchen realize just how deeply in love she was with him. The love had obscured her. It had disorientated her, preventing her from seeing the essence of things. Jianchen, when I was heavily injured on the Tianyuan continent and entered a long period of slumber, you might have thought that I had lost contact with the outside world completely and had no idea what was happening around me. Kaya turned around and looked at Jianchen. Her face was mixed, and she continued, but in reality, it was the exact opposite. I knew exactly what you did during the time I was unconscious. I even knew you went to the Mountains of Seven's Despair and encountered 9 god kings there. Only by risking your life did you find the heavenly resource that could heal souls, the Albumstone Heartflower. It was exactly because of the Albumstone Heartflower that I awakened from my slumber. Kaya spoke very softly. Her eyes that looked towards Jianchen were filled with a tenderness she had never displayed before. Now that the final barrier in her heart had been pierced, she revealed her true feelings. She no longer hid the feelings in the depths of her heart. Jianchen was shocked when Kaya mentioned the events that happened in the Mountains of Seven's Despair. After all, not only was Kaya's cultivation puny back then, not even at the origin realm, but she was unconscious as well. Despite all that, she was still able to sense what happened in the Mountains of Seven's Despair. This was unsettling for him. Kaya had displayed extraordinary abilities in many aspects in the past. They could even be called utterly shocking, making Jianchen guess that it was extremely likely for her to be the reincarnation of a certain expert. However, it was impossible for her to know so much as just a Saint Emperor. Fairy Hao Yu was a reincarnated primordial realm expert from the Saint's world, but let alone Saint Emperor, it was impossible for her to possess Kaya's heaven-defying ability even when she was at the origin realm. Is Kaya a reincarnation of a Grand Prime? Jianchen thought. At the same time, he felt puzzled. If she was a reincarnation, why did Kaya still not show any signs of awakening her memories now that she was already a god king? This was clearly different from Fairy Hao Yu and the founders of the 10 great protector clans on the Tianyuan continent. Fairy Hao Yu had reincarnated with all her past memories, while the founders had also gone through samsara. Out of the 10 of them, Feng Xiaotian, Gehai Dao, and Yang Lai all recovered their memories when they were Saint Kings. While Jianchen was pondering about all this, Kaya thought back to the past. She was gloomy and dispirited. She said softly, "It was also from then on that your shadow gradually appeared in my heart, and it grew deeper and deeper. Actually, I can sense that you only treat me as a friend and not a partner at all, so I always buried my feelings for you such that it was a secret that only I knew. I planned on hiding this secret for the rest of my life, where I would never tell you. As long as I could remain by your side and see you often, it would have been enough. However, I suddenly don't feel like hiding it anymore. I want you to know because I have a strong feeling that I probably won't get the chance to say it in the future if I don't say it now." Kaya's eyes gradually moistened when she reached there. They clouded up before condensing into 2 translucent tears that slowly flowed down her face. There was something she did not explain to Jianchen, and that was the strong feeling she experienced. It was as if she did not have much time left with Jianchen, as if they would separate soon. The separation this time might be forever. Jianchen obviously had no idea that Kaiya was referring to eternal separation. He fell into a long period of silence after he listened to Kaiya's words. A while later, he sighed gently and said, "Kaiya, we can only be friends." Kaiya's heart gently trembled. She did not say anything. Instead, she looked at the space outside gloomily. She seemed rather miserable. She knew that this would happen. They did not talk for the remaining portion of the journey. It remained silent within the spaceship. Both he and Kaiya said nothing. Before long, they reached the star brilliance plane. As spaceships could only be used in outer space, he stowed the spaceship away after reaching the plane. Without any hesitation at all, they immediately flew towards the nearest city. Very soon, Jianchen and Kaiya arrived in an extremely bustling city. They immediately paid a hefty price to locate the closest teleportation formation that could take them to other planes. Before long, Jianchen gained a more detailed understanding of the star brilliance plane, learning even more than what he had learnt from Yi Jianping and the others. The star brilliance plane was where the 9 brilliance Star Lord cultivated. As a result, in order to express their respect towards the 9 brilliance Star Lord, no one dared to found kingdoms or empires on the entire star brilliance plane. No one dared to take the name of emperor. The various organizations all stood on the star brilliance plane as sects or clans. The overall power of the star brilliance plane ranked towards the top of the 49 great planes of the saints' world. It was basically only second to the 7 sacred planes. As a result, there were over 100 teleportation formations that could take people to other planes on the star brilliance plane. They were controlled by several dozen peak clans and organizations. Jianchen learnt that the city where he currently stood was actually only under the control of a sect with infinite primes. A sect like that was only average on the star brilliance plane, or even slightly worse than the average. It was obviously impossible for them to have teleportation formations that could take people across planes. Jianchen finally learnt after some investigation that the closest interplanar teleportation formation was located in the territory controlled by a peak sect called the 5-Point Sect. Afterwards, he and Kaiya immediately went to a teleportation formation to travel to the territory of the 5-Point Sect. Just when Jianchen and Kaiya were about to make their way to the 5-Point Sect, the space in a region extremely distant from the star brilliance plane twisted, and a huge crack suddenly appeared. The Elder of Mountains and Seas appeared there like a ghost. As soon as he appeared, he closed his eyes and used his innate ability. When he opened his eyes, coldness flashed through them. "I found you. You seem to be on the star brilliance plane. Don't you even think about escaping through the teleportation formations on the star brilliance plane?" The Elder of Mountains and Seas became frantic. He did not dare to waste any time, so with a single movement he vanished. He hurried off towards the star brilliance plane as quickly as he could. "I've chased you for so long, so I can't let you enter the teleportation formation no matter what," the Elder of Mountains and Seas snarled inside. Jianchen and Kaiya were already standing within the teleportation in the bustling city. The teleportation formation was slowly activated and bright, white light appeared. They were about to be transported to the 5-Point Sect. However, at this moment, Jianchen's heart shivered. The intense sense of danger appeared once again. He has already located us. Before long, the mysterious expert will arrive on the star brilliance plane. We have to be fast. We need to reach the teleportation formation before he makes it to the star brilliance plane, Jianchen said sternly. With that, the teleportation formation exploded with light, and they vanished under its great power. The 5-Point Sect was one of the several dozen peak organizations on the star brilliance plane. They were extremely powerful, ranking 9th on the entire star brilliance plane. Even though they were only 9th, the star brilliance plane was a place only second to the 7 sacred planes after all. There was a myriad of sects and clans, and the plane was covered with experts. It was evident just how powerful the 5-point sect was to be able to stand out among them and reach such a high rank. The ancestor of the 5-point sect, the Point Cloud Venerable, was a dazzling figure renowned throughout the saints' world. This was because the Point Cloud Venerable grasped both the laws of time and space. The two laws complemented each other, unleashing astonishing power. This gave the Point Cloud Venerable supreme battle prowess, enough for him to claim to be invincible among his level of cultivation. The 5-point sect controlled 3 interplanar teleportation formations. One of them was located in the 5-point sect and was specifically for disciples, while the other 2 were located in 2 supersized cities that the 5-point sect administered. Firelight City was one of the 2 supersized cities out of all the cities the 5-point sect administered. The central square of Firelight City was busy. Cultivators constantly moved about, and the several dozen teleportation formations established there constantly flickered, transporting people between regions. At this moment, one of the teleportation formations flashed, and Jian Chen and Kaya appeared in Firelight City. As soon as they arrived, Jian Chen and Kaya approached the interplanar teleportation formation nearby. The teleportation formation was unusually quiet. It would go without use for 10 days or more each time, which was a stark contrast to the several dozen teleportation formations around it. The person who watched over the teleportation formation was a middle-aged man in the 5-point sect's uniform. He was a first heavenly layer infinite prime. Interplanar teleportation formations were an unignorable piece of property to all organizations. As a result, not only would each teleportation formation be protected by powerful formations, but the people who watched over them would usually be primordial realm experts as well. Jian Chen let out his presence slightly and disguised himself as a 3rd heavenly layer infinite prime. He negotiated with the infinite prime who watched over the formation. "I want to go to the Prosper Plane. The Prosper Plane is extremely far away from the Star Brilliance Plane. I can't transport you there directly. I can only send you to the Hematophagous Plane," replied the Infinite Prime. "Then I'll go to the Hematophagous Plane," Jian Chen said calmly. However, he was slightly frantic on the inside. The sense of danger was becoming greater and greater. The mysterious expert pursuing him was rapidly closing the distance. He needed to leave as quickly as possible. The Infinite Prime from the 5-point sect looked at Jian Chen and Kaya. He said indifferently, "It's 55 colored divine crystals each to go to the Hematophagous planes, so 100 for 2. Moreover, you can't carry any living organisms in your spatial treasures, or there'll be consequences once the formation detects it." Jian Chen nodded. 55 colored divine crystals per person was a fair price. It was much cheaper than when he left the desolate plane. He immediately handed over 105 colored divine crystals. He passed through the testing formations with Kaya and entered the teleportation formation. Although he carried spatial treasures on him, and Heya and Qin Yishuan were within them, they were inside the Enata Tower. As such, it was naturally impossible for the formations to find anything with the Enata Tower's quality. At the same time, the Elder of Mountains and Seas approached the Star Brilliance Plane with terrifying speed. The plane of land rapidly expanded in his eyes. He was hundreds of times faster than Jian Chen. As he drew closer, he became able to sense Jian Chen with greater and greater precision. Jian Chen is actually in the boundary of the 5-point sect. The 5-point sect has 3 teleportation formations that can take people between planes. He's currently at. The Elder of Mountains and Seas flew quickly as he used his ability again. Suddenly, his face changed and he cried out, "Oh no, he seems to be in Firelight City right now." Firelight City just happens to have one of those teleportation formations. The Elder of Mountains and Seas' face became extremely ugly. There was still some time before he could set foot on the Star Brilliance Plane. If Jian Chen was near a teleportation formation right now, he probably would have left before the Elder of Mountains and Seas had even set foot on the Star Brilliance Plane. If he was really teleported away from the Star Brilliance Plane, there really might be no more hopes of him catching up to Jian Chen and taking the Enata Tower away from him. This was because he could guess that Jian Chen would undergo consecutive teleportations and reach the proper plane before him. It would be difficult for him to stop Jianchen. If Jianchen returned the Inetta Tower to the heavenly palace of Bishing before he could catch up, there would be no more point in hunting him down. I have to stop him. The Elder of Mountains and Seas gritted his teeth. The light in his eyes flickered as he thought, I do have some ties with the Point Cloud Venerable of the 5-Point Sect. It looks like I can only send a message to him. Making up his mind, the Elder of Mountains and Seas immediately took out a jade talisman for messaging. A white-robed old man sat in the air among a mist-covered mountain range within the forbidden grounds of the 5-Point Sect. He did not give off any presence at all, making him seem just like an ordinary person. However, the space around the old man seemed to beat like a living heart. It throbbed rhythmically. As the space beat, the time there seemed to be affected as well, forcing it to become extremely unnatural. It would be slow at times and fast at other times. Unbelievably, time would even reverse. The laws of space and the laws of time were present on a single person. This old man was the supreme existence of the 5-Point Sect, the Point Cloud Venerable. At this moment, a jade talisman appeared in the Point Cloud Venerable's hand. He looked at it and murmured, It's from the Elder of Mountains and Seas from the Gloomwater Sect of the Aqua Plane. Why is he suddenly looking for me? The senses of the Point Cloud Venerable's soul immediately entered the talisman. He received a message from the Elder of Mountains and Seas from so far away. Point Cloud Venerable, seal up the 3 interplanar teleportation formations within your 5-Point Sect. I'm about to set foot on the Star Brilliance plane. I'm willing to give you 2 droplets of hell water in exchange. The Elder of Mountains and Seas' voice rang out. 2 droplets of hell water. The Point Cloud Venerable cried out as his eyes immediately became extremely bright. Hell water was a speciality of the aquaplane. It came from the few hell springs on the aquaplane. They were divine liquids that could consolidate the soul and cleanse impurities. Even to Grand Primes, they were extremely useful, which made them very precious. A single droplet of hell water would only condense after 1,000,000 years. They were extremely precious, making them a treasure that had all demand and no supply in the saints' world. However, the Elder of Mountains and Seas had offered 2 droplets of them all of a sudden, and it was just to make the 5-Point Sect close their interplanar teleportation formations. This made the Point Cloud Venerable believe the Elder of Mountains and Seas had lost his mind. All right, 2 droplets of hell water. That's what you promised. The Point Cloud Venerable agreed without thinking too much about it, as if he feared the Elder of Mountains and Seas would rescind the deal. Jian Chen and Kai Ya stood in the center of the teleportation formation in Firelight City. It had already been activated, causing white light to rise up and shine brighter and brighter. Gradually, it enveloped Jian Chen and Kai Ya. The teleportation formation was charging up. Very soon, Jian Chen and Kai Ya would be transported off the Star Brilliance plane and to the Hematophagus plane. However, at this moment, the mind of the Infinite Prime who watched over the teleportation formation shuddered. The powerful senses of the soul surged over. The arrival of the senses of the soul immediately made the middle-aged man show great respect. In just 5 seconds, a gleam of light shone through the eyes of the middle-aged man. He suddenly looked at Jian Chen and Kai Ya, who stood within the activated teleportation formation. He immediately formed seals with both hands, sending a power into the teleportation formation. Immediately, the teleportation formation stopped gathering power. The shining light from the teleportation formation that was just about to be fully activated gradually dimmed, returning to normal very soon due to its energy source being cut off. The teleportation was halted. Chapter 24:18, End of the Line, 1. Jian Chen stood within the teleportation formation and sensed the strengthening power. He finally became relieved. He had taken a teleportation formation across planes before. Although the formation needed to gather power for a while, he could definitely leave the Star Brilliance plane before the mysterious expert arrived. As long as he made it onto the Hematophagus plane, he would be able to take a second teleportation formation and directly travel to the Prosper plane. Provided he continued with his teleportations, the mysterious expert who pursued him definitely would not be able to catch up, even if they were a Grand Prime. At this moment, the blinding teleportation formation suddenly dimmed. Even the power rapidly weakened. Very soon, the teleportation formation that was charging up to send them to another plane came to a complete stop. What's going on? Why has the teleportation formation stopped? Jian Chen suddenly looked at the infinite prime responsible for the teleportation formation, and his face became sunken. I've just received orders to temporarily close down the interplanar teleportation formation. No one can leave through our 5-point sex teleportation formations, the middle-aged man said helplessly. However, his gaze towards Jian Chen and Kaya contained a hint of suspicion. He wondered to himself, strange, why has the ancestors suddenly shut down the teleportation formation? That rarely ever happens. Is it because of the two of them? Jian Chen's heart sank. He could already guess that it was related to the mysterious expert who was chasing them. He did not say anything. Instead, he immediately pulled Kaya towards the several dozen teleportation formations that were limited to taking people around the star brilliance plane. There are several dozen teleportation formations that can take people to different places on the star brilliance plane. Since the 5-point sex is unavailable, we'll go elsewhere. I refuse to believe he can close all the interplanar teleportation formations on the star brilliance plane, Jian Chen said coldly before immediately stepping into a teleportation formation nearby and leaving the territory of the 5-point sect. The ancestor of the 5-point sect, the Point Cloud Venerable, remained seated in the air. Although he did not take a single step out of the forbidden grounds, nothing on the star brilliance plane could be hidden from him if he wanted to know. This was because the senses of his soul were so powerful that he could envelope the entire star brilliance plane. It looks like the Elder of Mountains and Seas has come for the two of them. Poor they. They're only a mere infinite prime and God King, yet they're enough for the Elder of Mountains and Seas to pay such a hefty price to prevent them from leaving the star brilliance plane, thought the Point Cloud Venerable. He had become extremely curious about why the Elder of Mountains and Seas had used 2 droplets of hell water to stop 2 measly figures that did not raise his attention at all. Hell water had extremely significant effects on even Grand Primes, so its value went without saying. Despite that being the case, the Elder of Mountains and Seas was actually using 2 droplets for the two of them. Such an act did not suit him at all. I heard the Elder of Mountains and Seas recently went to the desolate plain to get the Anata Tower from Jian Chen. Is one of them Jian Chen in disguise? The Point Cloud Venerable's eyes lit up. He immediately stood up, and a terrifying presence radiated from him. It made mountains tremble and space twist. The disturbance caused by the Anata Tower had spread across the entire Saints world long ago. The Point Cloud Venerable naturally knew about it, but since there were just too many experts gathered on the desolate plain, the Point Cloud Venerable knew it was very unlikely for him to obtain the Anata Tower. He might even end up offending all the organizations, so he did not take part back then. But now that it was extremely likely for Jian Chen to be in the territory of his 5-point sect and that no one else apart from the Elder of Mountains and Seas knew, the Point Cloud Venerable immediately became interested. Even if he obtained the Anata Tower, he would not need to worry about all the experts coming to fight him for it. Haha, what a heaven-sent blessing, what a heaven-sent blessing. All the other people want the Anata Tower so that they can return it and benefit from the heavenly palace of Bishing. But with my methods, if I plan things properly, I can prevent anyone else from learning about this. I might even be able to take the Anata Tower for myself. The Point Cloud Venerable chuckled aloud. The laws of time and space wrapped around him. He had already begun to use his exceptional techniques to obscure the heavenly secrets. However, at this moment, his heart suddenly thumped. A sense of unease silently rose up in his heart. The Point Cloud Venerable was surprised. After a moment of thought, he seemed to fuse with the world. Under the complementary laws of space and time, a river of time appeared beneath his feet. The light in his eyes flickered as he peered into something. He gave off a dense presence of ways as he looked along the flow of time, gazing into the future. Gradually, the Point Cloud Venerable's excitement vanished. He became stern. Very soon, the river of time vanished, and the presence of ways around him disappeared as well. He hovered in the air as he stared into the distance. He was stern and surprised. I never thought the Enata Tower would be such a huge piece of karma. It's a disaster. I can't possess it. Although I can't see the source of this karma and I struggle to see the origins of the disaster, I did see the destruction of the 5-point sect and my death. If I interfere and take the Enata Tower for myself, it might end up with me, but my final fate would be death. The Point Cloud Venerable struggled to remain composed. He became rather pale. He possessed wondrous abilities with the combination of the laws of time and space. He could see fate and the future. He had managed to avoid many calamities with this ability, which was why he firmly believed what he saw in the river of time. The Point Cloud Venerable gradually calmed down. He sat back down and decided to no longer interfere. To another side, Jian Chen had already left the territory of the 5-point sect through a teleportation formation. They had arrived in a second city with an interplanar teleportation formation. After paying the 5-colored divine crystals, they tried to teleport away as soon as possible. The sense of danger within him was becoming more and more powerful. He knew that there was not much time remaining. However, at this moment, a powerful senses of the soul descended from outer space, directly enveloping the city where Jian Chen was located. Jian Chen could clearly sense the suffocating senses of the soul from within the teleportation formation. It surged through the dense power of the formation and enveloped him. The senses of the soul were so powerful that it actually interfered with the operation of the teleportation formation. Immediately, the power around the teleportation formation pulsed with instability. The teleportation formation could not charge up anymore. Oh no! Jian Chen's face changed. The mysterious expert was even faster than he had imagined. Chapter 24:19, End of the Line, 2, Rip. In the next moment, space was ripped open. An old, shriveled hand instantly reached out towards the teleportation formation that could take people to other planes. The hand contained unbelievable power, and the laws had condensed around it as well. The thick layer of power around the teleportation formation seemed as fragile as a piece of paper before it, unable to stop the hand at all. Stop. This teleportation formation belongs to our Rakshasa sect. Senior, if you ignore the rules and destroy the teleportation formation of our Rakshasa sect, aren't you afraid of angering the Rakshasa ancestor? Called out the primordial realm expert who watched over the teleportation formation. As the teleportation formation operated, all of the protective formations would be shut down, so the teleportation formation was completely open right now. Not only did the arrival of the shriveled hand disrupt the stability of the teleportation formation, but it could even cause irreparable damage to the structure and inscriptions. After all, this was a teleportation formation that could take people across planes, not any old formation. The construction of every single one of them cost a tremendous amount of wealth. Even peak organizations would not have many of them. They would be extremely difficult to repair once damaged. I, the Elder of Mountains and Seas, will pay for all your Rakshasa sect's damages twofold, said the Elder of Mountains and Seas. He stepped out of the rip, and the blue light around him enveloped the entire city as an ocean. With the power of ways weaved in between, it obscured the sky and hid everything happening within it. Afterwards, he suddenly wrenched his hand back. Jian Chen and Kaiya, who stood within teleportation formation, immediately felt a mysterious power restrain the space around them. As a result, the two of them were pulled out of the teleportation formation. As this happened, neither Jian Chen nor Kaiya was able to resist at all. After all, they faced a grand prime. The difference in strength was just too great. Swish. With a flash, the Elder of Mountains and Seas departed with Jian Chen and Kaiya. He had vanished. The primordial realm expert from the Rakshasa sect nearby immediately crushed a jade talisman. In the next moment, powerful senses of the soul emanated over and revolved around the sky above the city. The Elder of Mountains and Seas, a voice that seemed to emerge from hell rang out in the space there vaguely. Afterwards, the powerful senses of the soul expanded and enveloped the entire star brilliance plane. The ancestor of the Rakshasa sect searched for the Elder of Mountains and Seas across the entire star brilliance plane. In an extremely remote region of the Star Brilliance Plain, the Elder of Mountains and Seas stood proudly within a water-blue barrier. He was unable to contain his excitement. Before him stood Jianchen and Kaya. They were both stern. Now that they faced a grand prime, their hearts had completely sunken. My heaven-obscuring barrier of flowing water can obscure the heavenly secrets and hide from the senses of the soul of most grand primes, so don't even think about waiting for other experts to arrive here then fleeing during the chaos. Jianchen, you fled under my watch for so long. I would like to see how you'll be able to escape this time. The Elder of Mountains and Seas sniggered as if victory was within his grasp. Indeed, there was no reason for him to worry at all now that Jianchen was trapped within his heaven-obscuring barrier of flowing water. The heaven-obscuring barrier of flowing water was equivalent to a miniature world. Unless the miniature world was destroyed, no one could escape from it. However, Jianchen would be dreaming if he wanted to destroy a Grand Prime's barrier with his strength as an infinite prime. Senior, you went to such great lengths to chase us because of the Anata Tower. I can give you the Anata Tower, but you must spare us, Jianchen said sternly. The Elder of Mountains and Seas shook his head when he heard that. He smiled strangely and said, Jianchen, if you had come up with that earlier, I really might have spared the two of you. However, it's too late now. The Elder of Mountains and Seas' face turned cold and became filled with killing intent. He continued, You made me chase you for so long in outer space, and I even came across a golden sword beast sovereign because of you, injuring me a little. You angered me long ago. This time, even if you hand over the Anata Tower willingly, I will never spare you. I know you have some connections with the God Clan. If the God Clan was at their peak condition, I might have been a little afraid, but the God Clan is different from before. As long as you're dead, the Hall Elders and Great Elders of the God Clan will never take action for someone as measly as you. Are you really determined to kill us? Jianchen's face sank. Determination flooded his eyes, and he secretly communicated with the sword spirits. He had run out of options now. The only way for him to fend off this disaster was through the fusion of the twin swords. Although this would expose his identity, he was out of choices now. The Elder of Mountains and Seas said nothing. Killing intent rose up in his eyes, and he no longer wasted any words on Jianchen. He directly struck out. He extended a hand, and the power of laws surged. A blinding, blue light turned into a huge wave, sweeping towards Jianchen and Kaya. As if he faced a great opponent, Jianchen became extremely stern. He was about to fuse the twin swords. He did not hide inside the Anata Tower. Although the Elder of Mountains of Seas could not get through it, he could simply take it away. Once the Anata Tower ended up in the Elder of Mountains and Seas' hands, he would only need to refine it slightly with his exceptional abilities as a Grand Prime, and they would be reduced to sitting ducks. Boom. However, at this moment, a deafening sound suddenly rang out. The Elder of Mountains and Seas' heaven-obscuring barrier of flowing water trembled violently. Gradually, a crack appeared in the barrier that could block attacks from Grand Primes. Point Cloud Venerable, don't get in my way. Once I obtain the Anata Tower, I'll give you half of the benefits, the Elder of Mountains and Seas snarled. His barrier was extremely well hidden, enough to hide from the senses of Grand Prime souls. Apart from the Supreme Nine Brilliant Star Lord, only the Point Cloud Venerable could find him through the truths of space and time on the entire Star Brilliance plane. I don't want the Anata Tower. The Anata Tower is an object that ties into huge karma. Once I try to take it, I will face a massive crisis. Jianchen, I am the Point Cloud Venerable of the 5-Point Sect. I will destroy the heaven-obscuring barrier of flowing water for you and end the tie I created with you earlier. Whether you can escape or not will be up to your luck. The Point Cloud Venerable's voice rang out slowly. The laws of space and time weaved together above the barrier, forming an invisible blade that landed on the barrier viciously. Immediately, the heaven-obscuring barrier of flowing water shattered. Kaya, leave with the Anata Tower. Jianchen responded extremely quickly. He cut open space with the 9-star sword of heavenly ways and shoved the fist-sized Aneta tower into Kaiya's hands. At the same time, he activated the cosmic movement talisman he had found from the primordial realm expert of the Moon God Hall without any hesitation and stuck it on Kaiya. Then he pushed her into the spatial crack. His thought process was very simple. He wanted Kaiya to take the Aneta tower, and then activate the cosmic movement talisman in the spatial crack so that she would be taken to somewhere unknown. Kaiya would face no danger in the spatial crack if she possessed the Aneta tower. He could only remain behind to cover her, using the fusion of the twin swords to handle the Elder of Mountains and Seas or even kill him. As long as the Elder of Mountains and Seas remained alive, Kaiya would be found once again even if she left with the Aneta tower. However, at this moment, Kaiya actually forcefully flew back out from the spatial crack. She smiled faintly and seemed liberated. She said slowly, "Jianchen, if you want to leave, leave by yourself. I hope you will think of me often and not forget about me once I die," Kaiya said gently. She pecked Jianchen's cheek gently with her lips. You're facing death, yet you're still in the mood to act lovey-dovey? Do you think you still have the opportunity to escape before me?" The Elder of Mountains and Seas snorted coldly. His terrifying presence crushed the space there, causing it to seize up. Jianchen immediately felt like he had been immobilized. However, Kaiya was unaffected. She could move about as she wished in the frozen space. She used the laws of creation, destruction, and fire simultaneously, knocking the immobilized Jianchen into the spatial crack. "Kaiya!" Jianchen's face changed drastically as he fell into the spatial crack. He cried out. Kaiya stood on the star brilliance plane and looked at Jianchen with a smile. She seemed to be at ease, showing no fear as she faced death. Afterwards, she looked at the Elder of Mountains and Seas indifferently. Immediately, a blue light enveloped Kaiya. The blue light had been condensed from the Elder of Mountains and Seas ways. It was the power of laws, containing unbelievable might. Kaiya's body began to disintegrate at a visible rate under the blue light, leaving nothing behind. "Kaiya, no!" Jianchen bellowed out furiously. His eyes turned bloodshot. He wanted to charge out again. He watched Kaiya die before him helplessly. The grief and sorrow he suffered were enough to cause him to end himself. However, at this moment, the cosmic movement talisman activated. A dense power surged out and vanished with him. The spatial crack gradually closed up as well. "You're dreaming if you want to escape after ending up in my hands," the Elder of Mountains and Seas was furious. He had managed to corner Jianchen after chasing him for so long in outer space and expending so much effort. How could he just allow Jianchen to escape before him? The Elder of Mountains and Seas extended a finger. The power of laws descended, and a terrifying energy ripped through space. He was about to pursue Jianchen. He could tell from a single glance that Jianchen's cosmic movement talisman was not of particularly great quality. Even if he were transported away, he would not be far. Kaiya's body rapidly disintegrated as all of this happened. She was reduced to dust from the Elder of Mountains and Seas attack, dispersing into the surroundings bit by bit. It was her legs first, before spreading to her waist, and then the upper half of her body in the end. In an instant, Kaiya's entire body vanished completely, leaving only her head behind. The head rapidly disintegrated as well. There was no fear in her eyes at all. There were only sorrow and deep reluctance. She knew she was about to die. She did not fear death because she should have died back in the lower world. She had only awakened again because of Jianchen. Her sorrow and reluctance came from the fact that she understood she would not be able to accompany Jianchen ever again. She would not be able to fight at his side again. At this moment, Kaiya's face suddenly stiffened up. The light in her eyes suddenly vanished as if she had forgotten about her pain, her worries, and all feelings. In the next moment, a cold gaze appeared in Kaiya's eyes, directly gazing towards the Elder of Mountains of Seas. Under the icy gaze, the Elder of Mountains and Seas who had ripped open space and was about to pursue Jianchen quivered inside. A strange coldness filled his entire body. The Elder of Mountains and Seas unintentionally glanced at Kaiya's head, and his gaze just happened to lock onto her eyes. The elder of mountains and seas immediately shuddered when they made eye contact. The gaze seemed to possess the might of the heavens and infinite power. Just a single glance had filled his entire soul with fear. His body turned cold, his blood stopped flowing, and a chill ran down his spine. What kind of eyes were they? They were cold, emotionless, just like the eyes of heaven. They looked down on all existences like they were ants. Even for someone as powerful as the elder of mountains and seas, he could not help but grow cold inside. An inexplicable fear filled his mind completely. Even though he was a grand prime, he was unable to remain unaffected. Fortunately, this gaze only lasted for a split second before Kaya's head completely disintegrated and dispersed into the surroundings. Nothing was left behind, including her soul. The gaze that struck fear into the heart of the elder of mountains and seas had vanished with it. The elder of mountains and mountains froze up there. He did not move, nor did he pursue Jianchen, as he could not forget the terrifying gaze he had just witnessed. Even though it was just a split second, the split second had left a permanent mark in the heart of the elder of mountains and seas. He still had not recovered from the coldness in his heart even now. However, what the elder of mountains and seas failed to realize was that once Kaya died, a spiritual light that no one could sense was left behind. The light was extremely well hidden, and even the elder of mountains and seas failed to sense it at all despite their proximity. With a flash, the light vanished. It flickered through the stars at a shocking rate. It could cross the distance of a plane or even several of them with each flicker, such that even grand primes would be astounded by its speed. In just a few seconds, the light basically crossed through half of the saint's world. It passed by over a dozen great planes and entered a majestic, golden divine hall. A figure stood in the depths of the divine hall. He shone with a hazy glow, concealed by the light from the ways. He seemed to be a part of the world. The light arrived before the figure. With a flash, it vanished between the figure's forehead. The figure shrouded by the light trembled gently. He slowly opened his eyes and revealed a pair of emotionless eyes. However, very soon, a ripple appeared in his eyes. His eyes seemed to gain some color, as if many scenes were flickering through the eyes. It was as if a stone had been cast into a lake. They were no longer calm. However, this only lasted for a short while. He closed and opened his eyes again, and he recovered the prior coldness. "Mice, with the end here," he murmured to himself. The voice was utterly emotionless, and it was impossible to distinguish his gender from that. Afterwards, a jade-white hand extended out from the light into the space in front. The space before the hand was like a lake of clear water, allowing the hand to sink into it silently. What kind of gaze was that? Why was it so terrifying? The elder of mountains and seas gradually recovered as he stood where Kaya died. Still shaken, he remained in a daze. He had already become soaked in cold sweat. He had completely forgotten about chasing down Jianchen. The gaze had struck fear into his heart. He struggled to remain at ease from the dread he had just experienced. He was a grand prime, an existence that stood at the apex. He struggled to imagine just how powerful and terrifying an existence had to be to influence him so much with a single gaze. Probably even someone second to grand exalts, such as the 9 brilliant Star Lord, can't strike fear into my heart with a single gaze. Since it's not someone second to grand exalts, the elder of mountains and seas' eyes narrowed. As soon as he considered that possibility, he felt his entire body turned cold. It was also at this moment that many powerful senses of the soul emanated over from various places on the star brilliance plane, circling around the elder of mountains and seas. The disturbance from a grand prime's attack was just too great. The point cloud venerable had destroyed the elder of mountains and seas' heaven-obscuring barrier of flowing water, so he had already raised the attention of all the peak experts on the star brilliance plane. They all sent over the senses of their souls to check on the situation. One of the senses was filled with intense anger. A furious message rang out, "Elder of mountains and seas, you've destroyed the teleportation formation of my Rakshasa sect. If you don't give me an explanation, I can only pay a visit to your territory. The owner of the senses of the soul was clearly the ancestor of the Rakshasa sect. He was also a grand prime, no weaker than the elder of mountains and seas. However, at this moment, a great, mysterious power suddenly descended. With the arrival of the power, the nearby senses of the souls were like a mist before the scorching sun. They all dispersed. In an instant, all the powerful senses of the souls in the surroundings vanished completely. A range of 100 million kilometers around the elder of mountains and seas became a region that senses of the souls could not enter. The supreme power suppressed all the senses of the grand primes, whether it was their physical senses or the one from their souls. It isolated the entire region. What's happening? All the peak experts on the star brilliance plane were startled by this. At that moment, everyone could not help but look towards the elder of mountains and seas. Their gazes were extremely deep and seemed to hide a whole universe within them. They peered through space, gazing to billions of kilometers away. However, all they saw was chaos. Not only did they fail to see anything, but they could not even peer into the heavenly secrets. The Point Cloud Venerable who sat within the forbidden grounds of the 5-Point sect suddenly stood up. He stared in the elder of mountains and seas direction sternly as the light in his eyes flickered with uncertainty. I knew something would happen, but I never thought it would happen so quickly. The elder of mountains and seas is probably... The elder of mountains and seas obviously sensed what had happened in the surroundings. He showed some unease and was just about to leave. However, at this moment, a hand, blurred from the power of ways, silently extended out from the space there. It did not give off any energy ripples, nor did it have any astonishing might. The hand was like a ghost, emerging out of nowhere. It pressed towards the elder of mountains and seas silently. However, when the hand appeared, the laws on the entire star brilliance plane seemed to be heavily inferred with. They became messy. However, this mess seemed to possess a certain pattern at the same time. It was not complete chaos. It seemed like they were receding, giving way and yielding to the hand. The hand that had appeared out of nowhere seemed to replace the heavens of the star brilliance plane, becoming the supreme ruler of the plane. It was the unshakable king, where the 3,000 ways revolved around it and transformed with it. Spare me, Grand Exalt. Spare me, Grand Exalt. The elder of mountains and seas became extremely frightened. He had taken part in the war over 3 million years ago, and he had personally witnessed the battle between Grand Exalts from extremely far away. The hand that possessed a completely pure bearing of ways was basically a Grand Exalt who had comprehended the laws to the limits. The elder of mountains and seas used everything he had. He used various secret techniques, doing all that he could to escape from here. However, the arrival of the hand had severed the laws of the world and threw the space there into disorder, rendering all of the elder of mountains and seas comprehension useless. Moreover, with the suppression from the bearing of ways, the elder of mountains and seas had been immobilized. In the previous moment he was a glorious grand prime, an existence that stood at the apex, but now he had become as puny as an ant. Bang! The hazy hand gently pressed against the elder of mountains and seas' head with the power of ways. Immediately, the elder of mountains and seas disintegrated. This was true disintegration. As if he had been vaporized, not even a speck of dust remained behind. Everything on him truly vanished from the world. In a single moment, the elder of mountains and seas had died. He did not even have the time to cry out. Now that the elder of mountains and seas was dead, the hand vanished as well. It was like it had never appeared. It did not leave behind any traces either. The affected laws of the world on the star brilliance plane regained their order. The mysterious power that suppressed the senses of the soul vanished. Immediately, powerful senses of the souls swept over again, circling the region there. Afterwards, there were a few flickers, and many of the grand primes who sensed the abnormality hurried over. They hovered high in the air and looked down. The light in their eyes flickered as they felt both surprise and doubt. Where's the elder of mountains and seas? Why has he suddenly vanished? If the elder of mountains and seas had left, all of us would be able to sense him right now. But we found nothing at all. What happened here just now? Why were the senses of our souls blocked? Even the heavenly secrets had been obscured. The Point Cloud Venerable of the 5-Point sect had also arrived. He looked at the ground below silently. Point Cloud Venerable, you've grasped both the laws of space and time. In terms of understanding towards time-space, you surpass us all. Please turn back time so that we can find out what happened here, said some of the experts with ties with the Point Cloud Venerable. The Point Cloud Venerable shook his head. All of the order in this region of space has been thrown into chaos. The power is too strong, so I can't see anything, let alone turn back time. There is nothing that I can do. Suddenly, a powerful pressure appeared, and a man in azure robes silently appeared at an altitude of 10,000 meters. His arrival made all the stars in the sky shine with great brilliance. All starlight seemed to fall on him. The man who stood within the light from all the stars was the supreme expert that everyone knew on the star brilliance plane, the 9 Brilliance Star Lord. Chapter 24-22, Reincarnation. Greetings to the Star Lord. Greetings to the Star Lord. The arrival of the 9 Brilliance Star Lord caused all the peak experts there to clasp their fists and greet him. All of them showed respect. The 9 Brilliance Star Lord was in existence only second to Grand Primes. He had reached the 9th heavenly layer of Grand Prime many years ago and stood at the same level as the First Majesty of the Heavenly Palace of Bishing Hyexin. The 9 Brilliance Star Lord hovered in the sky. He looked around before gazing at where the Elder of Mountains and Seas died. His gaze immediately deepened, and the laws of the world wove into it. He peered into what happened there. However, the next moment he frowned. The laws there had been reconstructed, removing all traces and heavenly secrets. Even with his level of cultivation, he was unable to find anything. Which expert came to my star brilliance plane? From the changes to the laws earlier, their cultivation is the same as mine at the very least. There are only so many people with the same cultivation as me in the current Saints world. Who is it? The 9 Brilliance Star Lord's face became rather ugly. The star brilliance plane was his territory. Now that a foreign peak expert had killed someone on here, it was basically naked provocation. He did not forbid fighting between Grand Primes, but if an expert at the same level as him had come to cause trouble, he needed to stand forward. At this moment, the sky of the star brilliance plane suddenly became blood red. A figure condensed from blood appeared before the 9 Brilliance Star Lord silently. Master! The 9 Brilliance Star Lord was surprised by the blood-red figure. He immediately bowed politely. The blood-red figure was the Blood Tier Grand Exalt. Not only did the advent of a Grand Exalt surprise the 9 Brilliance Star Lord, but all the peak experts below him also paled in fright and immediately bowed. All of them were left shocked and speechless. Did the Blood Tier Grand Exalt personally come to the Star Brilliance plane over the tiny matter that happened earlier? What did it mean since it could draw out a Grand Exalt? It meant that what happened earlier was nowhere near as simple as it seemed. Begone, said the Blood Tier Grand Exalt. His voice was filled with energy, and he ordered everyone to leave. Every single word and action from a Grand Exalt was equivalent to an edict from the world. No one dared to defy it. Immediately, all the peak experts gathered there left. Master, why have you come? The 9 Brilliance Star Lord stood before the Blood Tier Grand Exalt and asked politely after everyone had left. Anata's reincarnation was killed in your territory. I obviously came to check it out, said the Blood Tier Grand Exalt. A dense, bloody mist gathered around him, completely obscuring his figure. What? Anata's reincarnation? The 9 Brilliance Star Lord gasped. His face became filled with disbelief. Master, are you saying that in the war over 3 million years ago, the Anata Grand Exalt didn't die and instead reincarnated through samsara? The Blood Tier Grand Exalt nodded. In the past, he also believed that the Anata Grand Exalt had died and vanished from the world, but ever since he saw Anata's reincarnation on the desolate plain, he knew the Anata Exalt Prime had not died as rumored. Receiving confirmation from the Blood Tier Grand Exalt, the 9 Brilliance Star Lord became solemn. He knew a little about samsara and reincarnation. Reincarnation bore extremely great risks to any expert, including Grand Exalts. Once a Grand Exalt reincarnated, they would lose all their memories and cultivation. They would return to being mortals and would have to cultivate their way back up step by step. It would be impossible for them to awaken their past memories before they reached a certain level of cultivation. The path of cultivation was littered with danger. Even if it were the reincarnation of a Grand Exalt, they would truly disappear from the world if they were slain and their souls were dispersed. And that was why the 9 Brilliant Star Lord seemed so troubled when he learnt that the Anata Exalt Prime's reincarnation had been killed. He believed that with the death of Anata's reincarnation, it would mean that the Anata Exalt Prime was truly dead. Perhaps he was able to see the 9 Brilliant Star Lord's worries, so the Blood Tier Grand Exalt continued, "You don't need to worry. Anata's soul has already returned to the heavenly palace of Bishing. She sealed up the past memories and only kept a soul with the current memories in her reincarnation. As a result, Anata actually wanted her death to happen." "Master, I am very confused. Why did the Anata Grand Exalt want her reincarnation to die?" asked the 9 Brilliant Star Lord. Anata's reincarnation was only a tool for Anata to comprehend the ways. Her reincarnation always accompanied a young man because she wanted her reincarnation to fall in love with the young man. She wanted to create a fruit of ways to assist her in comprehending her fifth way, the way of love. I paid some attention to the young man as well. He is the one who created quite a disturbance in the saints' world recently. He is the one who ran around everywhere with the Anata Tower, Jianchen, said the Blood Tier Grand Exalt. What? The Anata Grand Exalt's reincarnation was for comprehending the way of love through Jianchen? The 9 Brilliant Star Lord was utterly stunned. This event basically meant that a sovereign of the saints' world had fallen in love with someone insignificant in the saints' world. This was an utter joke. The Blood Tier Grand Exalt continued, "Now that Anata has abandoned her reincarnation, it seems like the fruit of ways for her to comprehend her fifth way is about to ripen. It's just that there was no need for her to abandon her reincarnation to harvest the fruit of ways, so why did she do that? Refining a clone from a reincarnation gives them unlimited space for growth. The clone might become a Grand Exalt as well. Wouldn't that be even better? Perhaps Anata is already under the influence of her reincarnation and wants to leave behind a deep impression in the heart of that young man called Jianchen." The Blood Tier Grand Exalt was perplexed by this at all. The matter related to a Grand Exalt, an existence on the same level as him. Moreover, the Grand Exalt in question was even more powerful than him, so there was nothing he could peer into at all. He could only guess. The 9 Brilliant Star Lord fell silent. What he learnt from the Blood Tier Grand Exalt was just too shocking. He needed to digest it properly. At this moment, a space ring appeared in the hand of the Blood Tier Grand Exalt. He passed it to the 9 Brilliant Star Lord and said, "This is a chaotic fruit of ways I found in chaos. Immediately take this chaotic fruit of ways to the heavenly palace of Bishing and pass it to Anata for me. In the past, I thought Anata was dead, so I collected a droplet of her essence blood to nourish Gusta's body. I wanted to refine his body into a battle slave for the war against the immortals' world in the future. In the end, Anata discovered this, which entangled my karma with her. Now, I'll use this chaotic fruit of ways to end this karma." "Yes, Master." The 9 Brilliant Star Lord accepted the space ring and immediately departed. After the 9 Brilliant Star Lord departed, the Blood Tier Grand Exalt's figure vanished as well. The Devour Plane was one of the 7 sacred planes of the Saints' world. It was also where the Blood Tier Grand Exalt cultivated. As a consequence of the Blood Tier Grand Exalt remaining on the Devour Plane for long periods and cultivating there and comprehending the ways, his presence had affected all the laws of the world on the Devour Plane. Cultivators could comprehend the truths of the ways with much greater ease here. It was a heaven for cultivation, which was why it was renowned in the saints' world. At this moment, The blood tear grand exalt sat on a throne with a thin layer of bloody mist around him within a grand, majestic hall in a blood-red divine hall on the Devour Plain. The huge divine hall was empty as if there was no other living creature aside from him. It looks like Anata is going to recover her cultivation soon, the blood tear grand exalt murmured from the throne. Anata has already comprehended the laws of creation, destruction, fire, and space. She has reached 100% with the laws of creation, destruction, and fire, while even the laws of space have reached around the 5th heavenly layer of Grand Prime. She was already extremely powerful, ranking within the top 3 of the saints' world. Only the person from the warring gods could keep her at bay. Now, she has comprehending a 5th law, the way of love. Anata is becoming more and more powerful. In the current saints' world, the person from the warring gods is already dead, while the space-time elder who matched her over 3 million years ago is dead as well. Once Anata recovers to her peak condition, will there still be anyone who can stand up to her? The blood tear grand exalt sat on the throne and felt pressured. Anata had comprehended 3 ways to the limit. Moreover, her 4th way, the laws of space, was close to the limit as well. On the other hand, he had only comprehended 1 way to the limit so far. Moreover, Anata had already begun comprehending her 5th way, so the difference between them was widening. But the 5th way she's comprehending is the way of love. Emotions are one of the hardest things to explain in the world. It's a double-edged sword. Although it can allow Anata's strength to climb to a higher level, it also restrains her. It might even create a crisis for her. If the heavens have emotions, they too will age. Grand exalts have already become an embodiment of the ways, a part of the ways of the world. They represent the world. As a result, grand exalts shouldn't have emotions, or they will be bound by countless crises. Not only will they be unable to advance their cultivation any further in the future, they might even meld with the ways and pass away. Anata is playing with fire. The blood tear grand exalt seemed to realize something when he reached there. Suddenly, he shook and revealed his blood-red eyes. His eyes were completely red, and blood seemed to surge within them. It was a chilling and terrifying sight. I understand now. After Anata comprehends her 5th way, there will be her 6th way. She'll make her reincarnation fall in love with Jianchen first, and then pass this heart-throbbing feeling onto her original body so that she can comprehend the way of love. Once her feelings towards Jianchen reaches an extremely deep level, she'll personally take action and kill the person she loves most to comprehend her 6th way. Her 6th way is a way of severance. With Jianchen's death, she'll forge her 6th way, the way of heartlessness. Only once she gains her 6th way will she return to the path of emotionlessness. Anata's reincarnation is the fruit for her 5th way, while Jianchen is the fruit for the 6th way that she's raising. No wonder she protects Jianchen. As it turns out, she's protecting her fruit of ways. But that works as well. Jianchen bears the azulate sword spirits. He'll definitely be someone who stands with the immortals world, and Anata had been injured by the master of the twin swords in the past. Now that she is using the successor of the twin swords to forge a fruit of ways, it's a form of revenge, a 6th way. A 6th way. I never thought Anata would gain 2 ways from a single reincarnation. She's becoming more and more terrifying. There might even be a day that the person from the warring gods won't be able to overwhelm her. In a certain region within the saints' world, many scattered meteorites hovered about. Jianchen happened to be sitting on the largest meteor emotionlessly in white robes. He took off Emo Tianyun's mask and no longer disguised himself. He revealed his true appearance. Back then, after Kaya pushed him into the spatial crack, the cosmic movement talisman had transported him to an unknown location. Even though he left the spatial crack as quickly as he could, he was already far away from the star brilliance plane. It was impossible for him to hurry back in a short amount of time. As a result, he simply found a meteor nearby and sat down. He adjusted his state to his peak condition. He knew that even if he hurried back to the star brilliance plane, it would all be pointless. Kaya was already dead. He had watched her gradually turn to nothingness. He could no longer find any trace of Kaya in the entire saints' world now. His heart hurt very much. He was overwhelmed by grief. His entire mind was filled with hatred. It was so intense that it made him lose his mind. He knew about the Elder of Mountains and Seas' innate ability. No matter how far away he was, the Elder of Mountains and Seas would still be able to sense him with precision. As a result, he just sat there patiently, waiting for the Elder of Mountains and Seas to arrive. Sword spirits, if I make you fuse the swords with my current strength, are you confident about killing a Grand Prime? Jian Chen secretly asked the sword spirits. There shouldn't be a problem for those at the 5th heavenly layer and below. Of course, we aren't absolutely certain because if they sense it and flee before we've locked onto them, it'll be very difficult for us to catch up, said the sword spirits. They could feel Jian Chen's sorrow and sense Jian Chen's determination. He had even accepted death. They knew Jian Chen had someone to kill, so they did not try to persuade him otherwise this time. Jian Chen nodded and no longer spoke. He fell into his thoughts again. Kaya, don't worry. I will definitely avenge you, regardless of the cost, Jian Chen swore inside. His eyes were filled with hatred towards the Elder of Mountains and Seas. Afterwards, the Enana Tower appeared in his hand. With a thought, he let out Xian Ming, who was cultivating on the 1st floor. Xian Ming, I really am sorry. I won't be able to hold up the deal we had earlier. I have to end your cultivation in the tower early, Jian Chen said apologetically. As soon as Xian Ming emerged, he discovered that something was off with Jian Chen. He asked in doubt, Brother, what's wrong? Has something happened? If there's anything troubling you, just tell me. I might be able to help you. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.